Returning group to do it again.
Do we have a good core returning?
We do have a good core returning.
Excellent.
So yes.
All right.
We have a few our seniors leaving that are really strong, but they left a good legacy going forward. So the younger group that continue to build on.
Very, very nice. Do you want to run down the list and let them give us a wave and say their name?
Yeah. Right off the bat, Brady Bailey. Cameron Williams. Nathan Mitchell. John Gill. Justin Sedever. I always mess up her last name. He was our manager, by the way, so I don't know.
Excellent, and thank you.
Luke Allen. Jackson Bradford. Alan Sedgwick. And last but not least, Dustin Walter.
All right, very good, very, very good. Excellent. All right, very good. Thank you so much. Do you want a picture in the boardroom or is there too many? Get a little picture? So come on up here, guys, and we'll get a nice picture. Trophy front and center. All right. Is there room for board up there?
I'm thinking no.
It's a big team. It's a big team. Yeah.
They're the important
It's
ones.
a big team, exactly. Oh, okay.
That's good.
All right. Okay. Okay, so team, I know there's lots of cameras, but if you see the lady in the pink with the blue jacket, she's the newspaper, so maybe smile for her. Okay. She's taking a few, that's good. All right. And parents, did you get all you need? All right, thank you so much, team. Thank you for coming in. Congratulations. Nice to see you. All right, beautiful.
Well done, Coach.
Congratulations. Thank you, team, for coming in, and good job this season.
Great job, Coach.
Isn't that a beautiful trophy?
No, we were sweeping out. You're coming back out. So yeah, we got one more that we'll get it. Really well done. Yeah, thank you. Good seeing you.
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you.
All right, wonderful, wonderful. Love to see our students and celebrate their successes with them. We are now on item D2, and that's recognition of San Diego County Office of Ed Outstanding School Social Worker.
Good evening, board and community. I would love to take the moment to introduce Dr. Maravich from Montecito High School, and she is going to share a little bit about one of the county's social workers of the year.
Excellent.
Good evening, board members. Dr. Thurman, it is an honor to get to speak on behalf of Carrie Bjork. Carrie's been here about a year and a half, and she was a school social worker in Escondido prior to coming here. She's a Ramona resident and made the choice a year and a half ago to come work where she lives and let her kids go to school. She is an outstanding social worker. In my many years, I have worked with many, but none like Carrie. She brings a very unique skill set, and I could go on and on about all the things that she does and all the things she's capable of doing and what makes her unique. But one of the members of our group who was nominated her said, it's very rare that one person makes such a big impact on an organization, and that person is Carrie. The skills that she has brought and the expertise that she's brought to Ramona are just beyond measure, and she truly has impacted every corner of this district, from elementary all the way through high school. Part of her duties at Montecito, she does work half-time in district responsibilities at Montecito. She's just so warm and kind and knowledgeable and such a great support, not only to students but to staff as well. We're just blessed and honored to have her, and I'm so in awe of her work. She was very well deserving of the award. Thank you.
Did she have anything she wanted to say to the board?
I'm totally fine not speaking. I'm grateful I don't have to.
She asked ahead of time not to speak.
Okay, and here I'm putting you on the spot, but thank you.
I appreciate the recognition. It's amazing. The county had a beautiful ceremony for everybody that was celebrated, and Leslie and Robin took the time to come down, and it was just
Oh.
nice. Surprised my husband showing up too. It was crazy, but it was just, I'm so appreciative of getting to do the work in Ramona for the first time in like a decade, and it's needed, and it's a privilege.
Thank you so much. Well, we're lucky to have you. Okay. So, picture. All right. Should we hop in for a photo? It is our usual custom. Okay. No, we'll get in there. Okay, thank you.
Come on, Sparrow. And while we're doing this, there are some NPCs if anybody wanted to fill in. I think people can. All right. Thank you. Well, thank you so much. Wonderful.
All right. We are now on item D3, and that's reports from student board members. And let's start on this side with Hannah.
Testing, are we all good? Okay. Good evening all, my name is Hannah Ferguson. I am the student representative from Mountain Valley Academy. My computer just died, sorry. Before I begin the report, I want to thank the members of the board, cabinet, and President Perfect and Dr. Thurman for having me, as always. For some of our high school events, we just had our Europe trip. Destinations range from Schönbrunn Palace Grounds in Vienna, Austria, the St. Nicholas Church in Prague, and the Linden Chocolate Factory in Zurich, Switzerland. There were many more excellent places that they toured on their about 7-day journey. Our students arrived back home safely this last Friday. Our 8th grade promotion is set for June 6th at 9 a.m., and our senior graduation is to take place on June 6th at 7 p.m. For some of our ASB events, shortly after the last board meeting in March, MVA hosted our annual MVA Madness. I am happy to say that the junior class pulled through and won the competition for our class. The past Saturday, our ASB volunteered at the annual PTSA event, in which students and parents feed the hungry bicyclists that participate in Ride Across California, which goes through Ramona. Some future events include a game night to take place on May 19th, as well as a few more spirit days to end off the year, and an end-of-the-year trip to Knott's Berry Farm, which is set for June 5th. This week, we'll be having an Anything But a Backpack Day, which I'm very much looking forward to, on this Wednesday, the 19th. For some school-wide news, our clubs are going strong. The chess club has increasing participation. Our film production club is working on a short film currently, and our choir club is preparing for next year. In other news, our annual spaghetti dinner is coming up to take place on April 28th, beginning at 5:30. Our ASB will be volunteering in all capacities, as well as running a face paint booth as an ASB fundraiser. This is one of our biggest fundraisers for both ASB and our PTSA, so I would like to welcome the community to join us for a good night of food and fun. This concludes my report. Thank you all for having me, and have a wonderful night.
Thank you so much. So you mentioned spaghetti dinner?
Yes.
Okay. And that's a fundraiser open to the community?
Yes, the community is definitely welcome and encouraged to attend.
Great. Would you tell me the day and time once more?
It's on April 28th, which will be next Friday, beginning at 5:30
Okay.
at Mountain Valley Academy in the auditorium room, so right in the front. Yeah.
Right. Very good. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
All right, moving to this side. Sparrow, would you like to move on? Thank you.
Testing.
You're
good. Good evening, Dr. Thurman. Did I say that right? Okay. President Perfect and members of the board, thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of Montecito High School. Our Skills USA teams competed this weekend, and 5 of our 11 competitors, my apologies, were gold medal winners. Our winners were the Teamworks team of Chance Kaufman, Gerson Hernandez, Devin Tandy, and Eduardo Corona in the Masonry category, Kale Spellman. These 5 students will be heading to Atlanta in June for the national competition.
Wow.
Our flag football season is underway. Last week we won against Vista, and this week we're playing at home, again, versus Valley from Escondido. Come see them play on Thursday at 2:30 on the Wilson Field. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you so much. Lovely report.
Thank you.
And Katie.
Hello, my name is Katie Drum and I represent the students at Ramona High School. Thank you for having me here again, board and Dr. Thurman. RHS students have been very busy. As the end of the year is approaching, ASB has been planning many events, including Wellness Week, which will take place on the week of May 1st and promote student well-being through various activities. Prom, which will take place on April 29th at the Hyatt Regency Mission Bay Hotel, and tickets are now on sale. Prom court nominations are also currently open, and voting for our 3 court members will begin on Wednesday at lunch. ASB has been enjoying our Project Read events at all of the elementary schools, almost just as much as the kindergarten students that they have been reading to. The next Project Read will take place on April 27th at Ramona Elementary, and we invite the board and Dr. Thurman to come see ASB in action. ASB has also been holding an ELT competition where ELT classes answer trivia questions about RHS to win a prize at the end of the year. ASB is continuing to keep a positive environment on campus with their dodgeball tournament that will take place this week in the new gym, and students are so excited. Our student leaders are also busy planning Area R, which is an event at Ramona High School where future Bulldog leaders are invited to build leadership skills. This will be taking place on May 12th. We love to celebrate our outstanding Bulldogs through our Student of the Month program, which is ASB run. This month, one of our Student of the Months was Kai Snout, who was recognized by the Ramona Rotary Club as well as by RHS administrators. Our RHS Fusion Club spent their weekend beautifying our campus with our NHS club, and we love to see our Bulldog campus pride. Our sports teams have been representing RHS in such a positive light. One of our boys golfers, Conley Pavlik, made a hole-in-one on the 11th at Madeiras. Our track boys distance medley relay team competed at the Arnie Robinson Invitational and finished as champions. Our RHS track team also volunteered at the 29th annual Connie Halfacre and Candace Cox adaptive track meet, and they just loved it. Our FFA teacher at RHS, Miss Martineau, had the privilege of taking 6 students to the Southern Region FFA Speaking Finals in Pomona on March 24th, and all 6 students placed in the top 10. She also supervised 11 students on the 25th at the Modesto Junior College Field Day, where all students performed so well. We are so proud of them. RHS Skills USA competed at the California State Competition. 5 students will be going on to nationals in Atlanta, Georgia in June. All of the following students received gold level awards: Niall Jacobson Hearn, Riley Jensen, and Audrey Norton in Engineering Technology Design. Zachary Steen competed in Motorcycle Service Technology, and Gracie Lynn Jordison competed in Power Equipment Technology, and we are so proud of our Bulldogs and their accomplishments. Thank you.
Thank you very much to all our student board members and their reports. Sounds like a lot of great things happening at all of the schools, and it's really fun to hear about it. Okay, so I am deviating slightly from the agenda. We passed an item on consent, personnel. Was consent, right? Anyway, there were a couple of noteworthy items there, and one is the retirement of Barbara Schment over at Mount Woodson Elementary, but we do have a couple of exciting additions and changes to our administrative leadership team. Dr. Thurman, would you please make those introductions?
Absolutely. First, tonight we approved Jerry Bellick to be the new principal at Woodson Elementary. So Jerry, congratulations very much. Additionally, we also approved Mr. Chris Gunnett to be the new principal at Ramona Elementary. Congratulations, Mr. Gunnett. Thank you.
So just, as an interesting note, this isn't Mr. Gannett's first time at RE.
Yes, he was there from the ages of probably 5 to 12, maybe? Something like that, 11? Elementary. He's returning home to where he did elementary
home to
school.
Ramona Elementary. So thank you very much, both of you, and congratulations on your new assignments. All right, very good. We are now on agenda item D4, and that's report from California School Employees Association, Chapter 733. Do we have a report tonight? No? Okay, we'll move on. And a report from Ramona Teachers Association. Lindsay. Oh,
I thought.
well, gosh,
wanna do it
people.
then?
Thank you.
Okay.
Would you mind holding just for a moment? Thank you. Okay. Would you please make the introduction?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Corey. We also named the new principal of Olive Pierce Middle School starting this coming school year, the 23-24 school year, Mrs. Lindsay Benedetto. I don't know. Oh, there she is. I see her in the back. Yes, there she is. Thank you, Lindsay.
Excellent. And I am so sorry I missed that in the list. And thank you and welcome. Excellent. Okay. Ms. McDonald, report from Ramona Teachers Association.
First, we want to congratulate all of our site educators, educators of the year, and we want to do a special congratulations to Katie Scahan for being named RUSD District Educator of the Year. We also want to acknowledge the efforts of our RTA bargaining team for all they have done this year. They came prepared all the way back in November with all the changes in cabinet positions this year. It's been quite interesting, but our team has worked with each cabinet member to catch them up and streamline the process in order to have a productive day this last Friday. We also want to say thank you to the current cabinet members for coming to the table prepared Friday, which allowed our team to have that productive day, which also resulted in a tentative agreement. And then our next steps will be to have our membership vote on that tentative agreement before hopefully bringing it back to the school board next month, May 11th.
Very good. Thank you very much for that report. We are now on section E, and that's public comment on items that are not on the agenda. We have no cards submitted at this time. Section F is education services. Item F1 is report on graduation and promotion dates and times.
Good evening, board members. It's that time of year where we get to celebrate our students across the district as they promote from both elementary, middle, and graduate from high school. It's a great time when schools are buzzing in anticipation of the ceremonies where we commemorate this time for students and families. This information item includes dates and times for each of our schools' end-of-year commencements. You'll see each school listed along with the date and the time, and additional information will be sent out to each of you if you are able to attend.
Very nice, thank you. So, as typically happens in Ramona, the elementary schools are pretty much all at the same time. So, board members, if you would let Karina know if you're planning to attend any of these, which ones you're planning to attend, and we do love to have people at each and every one if we possibly can. So, thank you very much for providing the list. We are now on item F2, which is information, and it's a report on the elementary counselor's role in social emotional learning support.
Great, thank you. President Perfect and Governing Board, we're excited to bring the counselors for Ramona Elementary and Hanson Elementary, Lucille Bosworth and Christy Robertson, to the meeting tonight to represent all elementary counselors across the district. We welcome them to share with the board and community the integral role that they play on our campuses, providing social emotional support for students, families, and staff, and the impact that they are having across the district.
So you have a
Good
handout.
evening, board and Dr. Thurman. Thank you for taking the time to listen to us and find out more about the elementary school counselors program. We want to first start by introducing the team. As Leslie said, I'm Lucille Bosworth, the school counselor at Ramona Elementary. This is Christy Robertson, the school counselor at Hanson. We also have Bethany Robertson at Mount Woodson, Jennifer Bishop at Ramona Community Montessori School, Mount Valley Academy, Jenny Silva at James Dukes, and Jill Hamilton at Barnett Elementary.
All right, so I thought we would start out with a mindfulness activity. Some of our favorite things to do because so much of our time is teaching kids coping skills and strategies and trying to get their little regulated systems all nice and calm. So I thought we would do this. So get out your mugs of hot cocoa. Gonna do some hot cocoa breathing. If you want to add marshmallows, put marshmallows in. We've got some sprinkles. Kids get really creative with chocolate sauce, and then they put things like way up here. All right, so when you breathe in, you're gonna breathe into your nose, and your shoulders are gonna go way, way, way up. And then when you breathe out through your mouth, shoulders down, mouth. Ready? Okay, our little friend from RE is going to
Unfortunately,
teach us
the
about
person doing it does not have access to the video. So
Oh.
why don't you just go ahead and
All right,
read
so we're
them.
just gonna do it. She's adorable.
Okay.
All right, so
Watch
what
it
we're
later.
gonna
She's
do-
adorable.
All right, so you're gonna put the cocoa right up under your nose, and it smells so, so, so good. Breathe in, slowly out, pull it down straight. Breathe in, out, all right, thank you. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, somehow I feel like I needed that.
Me too.
Thank you.
Exactly.
That pause for a moment.
This is
Right.
what we do every day.
Yeah.
Running 40 minutes late had me a little, you
Exactly, right? This
know.
is our mindful moment. Okay, so raise your hand or let me know if you've ever had a school counselor at your own elementary schools growing up.
Back when we were 6,
So you have one. Good. Elementary school counselors are not typical, so we have such a special, unique opportunity with our little ones to be able in our district to get them set up for success, hopefully as they go through our middle school, our high school, and beyond.
For those of you that like the numbers, we want to throw in a few statistics here. 1 in 5 children are going to have a severe debilitating mental health disorder before 18. 78% of school shooters exhibit suicidal ideation or suicidal behaviors. The number 2 killer of youth is suicide. Suicide rates for adolescent girls has risen 51% from 2019 to 2021. And 15% of children will be abused before the age of 18. Now, that is pretty depressing to hear. Kind of takes me to the mindful moment we had. But we wanted to go over that to say that the study also does show that when there's an available adult to a student, that the students report feeling less depressed, less stressed, less anxious. So by having that elementary school counselor at each site, then it does provide that support for students and help reduce those statistics. The number 1 factor of resiliency is having a supportive, involved adult that's outside of them. We do like to also survey our students to make sure that we are making an impact on them. And so we did ask our students, has the school counselor helped you in some way? 78% of students said yes, that the school counselor has made an impact in their life.
All right, so we follow the ASCA national model, which is the American School Counselor Association, and it's aligned with MTSS. So we do our job in tiers. So our tier 1 is all students. So we have the opportunity to go in and do classroom lessons, to do school-wide activities, whether it's Kindness Week, different military days, stuff like that, and PBIS. Some examples of our all-student support. Tier 2 are some students. So the big part of that for us is small groups. And our small groups are things like friendship, self-esteem, social skills, family changes, things like that. And then we've got check-in, check-out, where we've got kids who come to us in the morning, try to get set up for success, and then check back out in the afternoon. And then consultations with teachers, parents, staff, and admin. Then we've got our tier 3, which is our few students. So those are the ones that we do typically individual counseling with. And we do it short term, 6 to 8 sessions typically, and try to get them to come down the tiers a little bit. Crisis counseling when they need to do that, behavior support in the classroom, as well as academic support. And finally, we have our specialized intervention, which virtually we don't have to do too often, but that's the risk assessments and threat assessment, which threat to self, threat to others, we go ahead and we try to determine whether or not that's something that we need to process further. So
You can see we're not just all scheduling at the elementary.
yeah, we try to cram everything in social emotional we can. Okay, so this is a fun one. By the numbers for our district, between our 6 elementary schools, we have in our tier 1 that all students receive, we've done a total of 800 plus lessons as of March 1st. We've done that many this year, and that's pretty exciting. We typically get in every month to each class, if not a little bit more. Our tier 2, we have had 96 small groups. Again, this is a month later, we've got
lot more than that. That's pretty exciting. Our individual students, we've seen 1,700 kids up to this point within all of our schools. And then we've had total risk and threat assessments have been 27, right around there. And then we have a couple non-counseling support things that we do. We've covered for subs about 40 times, covered for CSOs where needed 144 times. So we try to fill in those pieces as we need. And then there's other support, social emotional learning strategies that we teach them. We use trauma-informed practices. We support SST meetings, 504 meetings, IEP meetings, attendance interventions, which is much needed in the district, and we're really pushing hard on that. And then some non-counselor tasks, which are the stuff covered for the coverage.
Wow.
Can you say like less access? Okay. This is a video from our students that talks about the impact. So if you really want to show it to you all. And then this will be the end.
Another breathing technique.
So we have so much fun though with these kids. And so we're reading little spot books. And we are going in and all the kids for my kindergartners know bunny ears. And for some reason that caught on where I go in and as soon as I go bunny ears, it's like, does a bunny talk? No. Does a bunny hop away? No. And so it's really fun because we really have such a great chance to really connect with these kids. So it's really exciting. And then we see them go all the way up in grades and then go on to middle school. So it's really, really fun. We're really, really fortunate to be here. And it's a really great thing. All the kids are saying,
Well, you're by the numbers. It sounds like you're very busy.
yeah,
Yeah.
very,
Lots of
very
student
busy.
contacts.
A lot. It's a lot. There are a lot more needs now, obviously, than there were before COVID too. I mean, we've all felt that. And all of the strategies and all of the things that we used before aren't necessarily enough now. So we've been really trying to hone in on those things that will help to make an impact now. That maybe weren't needed before, you know? So. Get it?
There we go.
Yes.
Excellent. Absolutely.
So this is from our students letting you know what it is. Since it's still in order. You have my login.
So do most of the students come to the counselor because of a teacher referral, a parent referral? How does that process work?
All of them. Self-referrals? Yeah, I have a unique situation because I'm inside the school, and so I'm like the thoroughfare for everybody. So I have a lot of kids who put in their own little notes, but we get them all. We get a lot from the kids themselves, and then parents and teachers. So I had a little second grader who told me that he's been feeling angry lately, and has something to do about it. And so just the fact that we're introducing them to their feelings, that they're able to identify that they're feeling angry, is just wonderful. And it's not going to work. Okay, well, we'll keep them together and then play it. This was our,
Very good.
our pivotal moment. Well, thank you so much. For
Thank
your
you so
time.
much.
Again, I'm Lucille Bosworth. This is Robertson. We appreciate you. Thank you, Board.
Thank you so much. Absolutely.
Hey, Don.
Yes.
I have one comment
Yes,
on that.
absolutely, Darren.
Dr. Thurman, thank you for having them present this evening. You guys did a great job. Thank you very much. And the fact that we have a counselor at every elementary school is a direct result of increased funding from the state for post-COVID and learning loss mitigation and social emotional wellness of our students. I think it's our challenge in the future, if those funds go away, how do we figure out how to keep them? Because they're incredibly valuable to each one of our students. So thank you for coming tonight, and we will try hard to continue this program.
Absolutely. Board members, any other questions or comments before we move on? Okay. And if you didn't see it, you do have a handout, so you can study those by the numbers at home if you like. It's impressive. All right, we are now on item F3, and that's Report on Local Control and Accountability Plan. We call it the LCAP. Educational Partners meetings number 1 and 2.
Board members, as of today, we have officially completed 3 of our 4 educational partner meetings. At our first meeting held in February, we had 53 attendees who reviewed the LCAP survey results that were shared with you, I believe last month or the month before, if I remember right. And some emerging themes that came from that group was the need for increased social emotional learning. So what we just had presented on from our counselors at the elementary schools, that is a need that showed up in that survey. In addition to behavior supports, safety concerns, supervision, increased emphasis on art, music, and PE for our elementary students. We talked about this also at the last board meeting, a need to increase TK awareness across our community as far as helping the community to understand that TK is not an option for school districts. It's something that we must offer. We'll be holding a parent TK night. I believe it's May 1st. More information to come, where we're inviting families across the community to learn more about those TK requirements in response to this information from the survey. In addition, we see often in the LCAP survey about facilities and the need to update facilities, repair facilities, maintain and clean facilities. Another component within the LCAP survey that was an emerging theme was that staffing and turnover rates. And so that and bathrooms. We've heard bathrooms before. Meeting 2 was also in March, at the end of March, and we reviewed the progress of the LCAP metrics. And so those metrics were our local and state indicators. So we're talking about state testing, the FIT report, attendance, chronic absenteeism, dashboard information, all information that's also been shared with the board also. Emerging themes that came through the educational partners at that meeting had to do with the need for increased academic intervention. So that intervention at all levels, to be honest, in both English language arts and mathematics. An increased effort on absenteeism. We have taken some time to dig deep into our chronic absenteeism data as we looked at these metrics with all of our administrators. So we're already taking steps towards these emerging themes, but we're going to see some of these show up in actions and services in the LCAP that we bring forward next month to our educational partners. Increased support for special education students and English learners is also a repeat that we've seen from years before. We are, let me back up one, we are in ATSI for many of our schools, which means extra support when it comes to absenteeism, but that's kind of across the state because of COVID and all of the different pandemic, the ramifications of the pandemic. One other thing that was really important to note through all of these metrics, and we talked a little bit about this with Robin Aaron when she shared data last month, that progress is slow, but we are recovering. We're already reaching some of our data points that were pre-COVID, which is super exciting. So that means that a lot of the work that we're doing at school sites is working. And whatever isn't working, we're looking to revamp and make some changes. Today marked our 3rd meeting. Our educational partners looked at the goal analysis. So how did we do toward achieving our goal? Actions and services. Basically, did we do what we say we were going to do, and how good did we do it? That's what we were really digging into today. I can't tell you those emerging themes because we just ended that meeting at 5 o'clock today. So we will be having our 4th meeting May 9th, and so when we come to the May board meeting on May 11th, I'll be sharing with you the outcomes from meeting 3 and meeting 4. So you'll hear what our educational partners had to say at both of those meetings.
All right, and what do we do with all that information?
All of the information that's gathered from our educational partners and all of our advisory groups, DAC, DLAC, ELK, any of the committees that we share all of this information with, we use that to develop our draft LCAP for the following year. So we modify our actions and services, maybe even change our metrics and look at how we're servicing students and so that we can get more, so we can improve our outcomes.
Very good, thank you. Board members, any questions or comments? No? Thank you, that's a very good report, and the timeline is very helpful for us. All right, we are now on item F4, and that's a report on the History Social Science Ad Hoc Committee We do have 2 speaker cards, so after the item's introduced, then we'll take those slips. We're keeping Dylan busy tonight.
Governing Board, mid-March, Education Services led the 3rd and final meeting of the History Social Science Ad Hoc Committee. Tonight, we'd like to walk you through the journey that the History Social Science team and Ad Hoc Committee has taken over the last few months, in addition to giving the board the opportunity to provide any additional information on this process as well. This didn't just start in 2023, though we're talking about it in 2023, that we're going to go back in history just a little bit to lay the foundation of why we're here tonight, where we've come along the way. In 2005 was the last RUSD adoption for History Social Science curriculum. At that point, we were behind the adoption cycle also. So we missed the 2009 state adoption cycle. Then in 2016, the state framework was adopted. Along the path here, and not noted separately, is there were several acts of legislation that also took place that we are required to provide instructional materials that meet the needs of. In 2017, we also missed that adoption cycle. And then on 2022, as we started to move forward with the pilot, we put the pilot on hold to take a deeper dive into the materials and our instructional material review process. That leads us to 2023. So just giving a little bit of background for new members, community members on where we are. In October to December of 2022, the board had some discussion about the pilot materials that were introduced at the end of the 21-22 school year. During those months, October, November, and December, the board provided some direction to Education Services and district leadership to create an ad hoc committee for the History Social Science materials. In particular, the U.S. History course and a unit within the U.S. History course. The committee was established, board members were selected, community members were selected, and then in January 2023, the committee launched. At our first meeting in January of 2023, we developed the committee's foundational knowledge of the state standards, framework, and all of that required legislation that I was speaking about before. We spent a full day together in the boardroom and had fantastic conversation and collaboration throughout that whole day. It was actually a really neat and exciting experience for us all to come together and just understand what our teachers do and our administrators do along this instructional materials selection process. We provided feedback surveys for all community members to share their feedback along the way in the process. In February of 2023, at our second ad hoc committee meeting, we provided a publisher training so that everyone had an equal playing field on how to really review these materials. Where could they find resources, primary resources, online resources? And then after everyone had that same publisher training, we spent time reviewing the board policy for our local board policy, in addition where they were found in all of the rubrics that were used to evaluate those materials. So each of the rubrics that we used during this evaluation were the same rubrics that all of the history teachers had used the previous year when selecting materials, originally. And they were all geared towards, when we were talking about academics, state standards, framework, required legislation, and board policy. And then they were in different components: teacher materials, student materials, alignment to standards, assessment, supports for at-risk students, those types of, those types of components. There was the evaluation. The ad hoc committee had an average score of 83. In comparison, this has also been a board update a couple months ago. The history team scored that same content with a 78. At that point, we provided a feedback survey also for the evaluation team, or the ad hoc team. In March of 2023, we came together again. We really dove into the EL supports that we could provide in conjunction with the materials that we had, and because that was what the evaluation showed us, that we needed additional EL supports, and that maybe there was some other supplemental or some gaps that we were seeing in the unit. So what we did was we dug into that as a team and looked for additional supplemental supports once again within that unit. That is an attachment to the green sheet for what the ad hoc committee suggested for supplemental supports, and we provided a feedback survey again. You'll note that second page is broken out by each different lesson, and it has the state standards attached to it. And then moving across, you'll see the supplemental materials that were suggested by the ad hoc committee. In addition to, would you like a minute to kind of look at that?
Yeah, just a minute.
Yep, that's no problem.
Thank you.
Yep, no problem. In addition to the supplemental materials that the committee provided, we thought it was important to share with you the sense of urgency that we have when we're talking about meeting Williams. We talked about this a couple months ago, about that need to ensure that we have up-to-date materials and we're not skipping the adoption cycle. That is a part of Williams, and it is a part of Ed Code. So not only do we have to have materials that are standards aligned and are meeting the legislation and all of those pieces, but we also have to keep up with the adoption cycle. And as you can see, we've missed a few, and we're close to missing a third. There was also some concerns early on, at the end of last year, or early on, about bias, and about the idea of materials being biased. And so our team in Education Services independently grabbed 11 articles from the online resources to evaluate them for bias. And we fact-checked. We used something called All Sides, and All Sides gives you kind of a rating of all the different media outlets on if it's far right, far left, and everything in between. And so what we did was, if a particular article fell in a certain column, then we looked for articles that would back up that information or refute that information from another article, which is exactly what we would want our students to do. We want our students to be critical consumers of our resources and of media. We want them to be able to fact check anything they hear, regardless of what source it comes from. And so that was something that we did as an as an exercise for this particular textbook and online resources, and we found that there was, actually let me pull it up so I don't misquote myself. We found that the majority were not biased, that when fact-checked across a different source, there was no bias found. There was a few that were they were highly balanced, not biased. There was a few that were somewhat balanced, and there was one in particular that was not balanced at all. So we dug in a little more, like looking at, why was this not balanced? It was an opinion piece. An opinion piece will never be balanced. So looking at that in that way and teaching our students that, right? We need them to really dig into sources from all different media outlets and question them, and seek out the truth and seek out the information and be a critical consumer of anything they're going to read. So just because we have heard the concerns, we wanted to do this ourselves with these materials and felt that that was a really important part of the process. In addition, I think it's important to note that starting in the 22-23 school year, we added the additional review by the school site council for any pilot materials. That didn't exist in our previous process. It's an extra layer, so we're ensuring that our families are a part of this process. In addition to that, we're also adding an additional evaluation tool, a survey that will be attached to our website for parents, staff, and community to provide input during any pilot process. I'm running out of voice. That means my presentation's too long. We thought it's important to also share feedback from meeting 1, 2, and 3, so you could see what the community members, the administrators, and the teachers had to say We did a sampling of the different feedback that we received from each of those, and you'll see feedback from meeting 1 on the first slide, and I'm not going to read them to you. And then we'll go to meeting 2 and meeting 3.
Okay, thank you very much for that report, and we do have a couple of speaker slips here. So first I would like to call forward Mr. David Patterson. You have 3 minutes. That was for Roger more than you.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. I have a friend whose kids graduated from this district more than 40 years ago, and they went on to be successful in some of our nation's best colleges. The same happened to our family and many of our friends' children graduating roughly 20 years ago. And today that tradition continues with other parents and even one of the school board members proud of similar academic success of their kids graduating at this time. That's more than 40 years of proven excellence at the school district, a continuum that opens the doors for many students to succeed in this complex world. So I ask the question, what is the problem with the work being done by our teachers and administrators? For example, how is it possible that we have one student described as chaos at Olive Pierce Middle School, and the Board of Trustees is busy scrutinizing textbooks for content? The LCAP list of complaints regarding our schools speaks for itself, a very messy situation that could not have happened overnight. I, for one, am glad the ad hoc committee process is completed so that the school board can get back to work on things that I think should have been at the top of the agenda. I hope you will see to approve the textbooks that the administration recommends for piloting, not just the one section of the one text reviewed by the ad hoc committee, but all texts. One more item regarding the ad hoc committee. 2 additional sources of information were recommended by a past trustee, and those sources must not be adopted by this school board. One is information from Hillsdale College, whose mission statement reads, in part, as a non-sectarian Christian institution, Hillsdale College maintains by precept and example the immemorial teachings and practices of the Christian faith. This school district cannot be directing our students to a religious organization for information on history and social studies. I'm sorry. The second recommendation is the Heritage Foundation. This website is not the place for students where students can get balanced information, as they proudly profess in the mission statement that they are mobilizing conservatives, uniting the conservative movement to work together, unquote. Do we really want our kids to profess the ideas of a professional lobbying organization and apply those ideas in a history class? I don't think so. On an ethical basis, we must say no to all lobbyists, regardless of what side of the political line they fall. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Bob Studi. Dave had his thing timed really well.
Yeah, he did it.
Right on it. Welcome, Bob. Nice to see you.
Hi, thank you for taking the time to listen. As you know, I'm part of the ad hoc committee, and I wanted to just go over a couple things. the board is doing the right thing by making sure that you understand that it is you who adopts the curriculum, and the buck stops with you. And to use whatever you need to get there is diligence. In that, all the things you saw are true that has been shared, and it was a wonderful exercise, wonderful, I gained knowledge from it. Unfortunately, we only covered one unit. So when this is brought forward, there has been not one moment spent on any other portion of these books. Originally, the board had decided that there would be a relook at how things are adopted, and if there was a new way of getting there and how it's brought through. And there was some communication and definition. What became review became a rubric. And you cannot take every book and every page through a rubric, but you can review. And there's time to review. And unfortunately, with a rubric, most of it is on a book or books that have already been vetted by the committee of the state. And so we would spend our time redoing what had already been. Does it meet standards? Instead of it doesn't meet what Ramona wants. Another thing I'm going to switch real quick because of time is whatever is done, wanted to make sure it wasn't lost, that anything outside because of the technology, that the publisher has to put a disclaimer where they say you are now leaving the authorized. I personally like to see that there was a block, because the publisher isn't even saying they're going to be responsible on any book. And so with that, I'll stop. I do want to point out on time, there's two of the books now, I think it's the first two, are now going to be 5 years old. So we're talking about redoing, but these are 2018 copyrights. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Bob. All right, board members, we have a couple of you that participated in this ad hoc. Do you have any comments on the report tonight? This is not action, this is information. Anything? Sure.
So when we started this subcommittee, our primary concern was not how the books comply with the rubrics and formal criteria. Our primary concern was bias. While some parts of the textbooks we looked at a year ago were perfectly fine, some parts had soft or not so soft bias, and sometimes implicit, sometimes by presenting half-truths or lying by omission. The purpose of this committee was to review for that bias and make sure that the books comply with our board policies and community goals. And that's what Trustee Drum's opening statement at the first session was about, and he summarized it beautifully, Darren, if you remember. The staff did a wonderful job with this challenging task, and I understand it's an experimental process, trial and error. Nobody has done it before. Nobody knew what the process like this should look like to get textbooks reviewed for political bias. While the education we got on the framework, standards, and rubric was useful, and we will be able to use it going forward for any other book we decide to review, like Roger suggested we should do. But it was a technical part, the formal part. Compliance with the formalities was never questioned by us. That was not the point of this committee. I commend the education department for seamlessly organizing it, but it seems like by focusing on the formal criteria we missed the point. I agree with Darren that the process was too long, and spending so much time on framework, standards, rubric We got great understanding of the textbook adoption process in general, that teachers and administrators do. But I don't feel that we accomplished our goal. For example, we discussed how the book supports English learners, utilizes visual aids, or monitors student progress. That was absolutely not our focus of our concern here. The state panel and our district evaluation team had fully vetted this book for standards, framework, and rubrics. With all this education we got in this committee, there was limited time to do the actual evaluation and no time to review the book beyond the World War II unit, resulting in a 20-minute or so time slot for to go over the gaps and recommend the supplemental materials. Although there's some short time was provided to discuss the gaps in the previous meeting as well. But we still don't have the whole book reviewed. There are a total of 19 units. We only reviewed one. So while this unit was acceptable, others may not be. The question is, has anybody reviewed and read the whole book? And can we be placing into the hands of RUSD students material that has not been properly vetted? The unit we looked at was quite acceptable, except a couple of items I brought up in the supplemental material. But in the second half of the 20th century, the book takes a left turn and gets more out of balance. Maybe we can glue some insets or flaps just to address the bias when we find it. We can explore the ways to address that. There were 5 rubrics to grade unit with 38 total components and indicators in all 5 rubrics total. Only one of those components asked about accurate and balanced content with a variety of perspectives. In rubric 1, of course, any textbook will get a high score, even if it completely fails that component on balance, as long as it complies with the formal standards. Leslie emphasized that no book is perfect, and I realized it was the best option at the table. I recall that the rubric score was 83, which is about low B. As yet, it is good as it gets to deal with. So if we can review the rest of the book, that would be nice. For compliance with board policies and community goals. We don't need to go through the rubrics in the future, probably. What we can do, we have maybe a different format, maybe an open workshop where anyone can give input before the pilot. We no longer need maybe to involve heavily take so much time of teachers and administrators. Maybe we can use some trusted partners who are willing to look at the book and share what they find out of balance, whether it's something minor or major. Maybe a Bob Studio will do it for us. I'm willing to do that too. Now we're supposed to vote on adoption in December. The unit on World War II doesn't get taught until after spring break. The question is, why were we given such a late chapter to evaluate? Because it's not going to be taught before we're supposed to vote on it in December. Why weren't we given this unit from our earlier semester? We could probably have done that. The education department wanted to compare apples to apples, to compare the same unit teachers evaluated a year ago, because they also evaluated World War II unit, and they wanted to compare if our grade would be different from theirs, and it was not much different. Let me see. But actually, in every book that we looked at a year ago, only one chapter in each book was evaluated using rubrics. Now we're at risk of being out of compliance. Do we have enough copies right now? What exactly is out of compliance? The last times we adopted books was 2005, 2006. So it seems like the history hasn't changed for the period before 2006. And the standards haven't changed from the 90s, so it makes this book in compliance with the state standards. So what seems like to make it current, we just need to add one chapter or maybe separate one small even chapter that would cover the period from 2006 to 2022 or so. And also going back to the online materials, featured sites. I would like to make a motion, possibly, I don't know if I can do it today if it's an information item, but in the future to block the complete featured sites on the district's Wi-Fi for district-wide for both teachers and students, and absolutely don't want to see it accessible to anyone, because it will make an impression that we as a district approve of that, and not allow teachers or students during school time access it and use it in the classroom. For example, I took a day to go over the featured sites, and they comprised a lot of materials on it. So, the topics range from activism, gender issues, environmental studies, and I think they're misplaced in the history textbook. For example, topic on activism contradicts our board policy on controversial issues, paragraph 9, where it states that political activism and the activities of protesting lobbying are reserved for outside of the class syllabus. And also, topics get into the areas of raising children, which belongs to the families, and instilling values. Gender issues belong to the families for the same reason. Environmental issues belong to either earth science class or environmental science class. Consistency of English grammar and spelling. For example, people of certain skin color, both skin colors have to be either capitalized or not capitalized. In those articles, one is capitalized, another is not. Some people are called Americans, some people are just called people. But according to APA style and grammar rules, which are the standards for writing college papers, and the scholarly writing in scientific fields, racial and ethnic groups are designated by proper nouns and are capitalized, both of them. It's like you see buyer and seller in the contract, where would be weird, one is capitalized, another is not. Also, besides poor grammar, it gives an impression that the author elevates one skin color over another, and also contradicts our board policy about civic education, U.S. history, paragraph 1, where it says that the instruction shall promote equality. In addition, featured sites contradicts our board policy on controversial issues in paragraph 2, where it speaks about the balanced manner. There were a total of 144 sources used. There were some well-known scientific sources, like Discovery, National Geographic, NASA, and History, and some related to certain museums, which I had no problem with. The vast majority of articles came from CNN, BBC, Washington Post, New York Times, The Guardian, and a lot of very obscure news outlets that I have never heard about, although I do get my news from the internet. There were only 2 mentions on, for example, Fox News, which is one of the top TV stations and news outlets, and was just 2 instances of the same article. There were even foreign outlets like the Portugal News, the Irish Times, the International Monetary Fund, BBC, and The Guardian, but nothing from the widely known American outlets, publications on the other side of political spectrum to balance it out. Nothing from, let's say, National Review, The Daily Wire, The Epoch Times, Prager University, Newsmax, Hillsdale College, publication Imprimis, Federalist, Washington Free Beacon, American Thinker, etc. It's not a balanced representation and thus contradicts our board policy on controversial issues. Paragraph 2. This is very lopsided choice of sources. I spent a day poring over the topics and articles in them, and I discovered that the following statistics. I did take the time to count. The winners were the foreign sources. The top 2 were British BBC and The Guardian. So, BBC had 32 instances of articles mentioned, Guardian 26, NPR 26, CNN 23, History 23, Smithsonian 22, Washington Post 20, New York Times 19, TED 16, National Geographic 12, Associated Press 11, USA Today 9, PBS 9, CBS 8, The Conversation 7, The Atlantic 7, at only 4 were Discovery, NASA, National Park Service, Biography, Education Week, Newsweek, US News or World Report, Vox, Wired, United Nations, Fox News 2 instances with the same article, Library of Congress 2, Department of Homeland Security 2. So those results are not 100% accurate, but they're 80 to 90% accurate, and they paint a picture of that's 100% accurate. To comply with our board policy, the materials have to represent either both sides or none at all. So it also contradicts our board policy on controversial issues, paragraph 8, because a great number of the materials in featured sites advocate or teach communism with the intent to indoctrinate or inculcate the minds of pupils' preference for communism. And why I think so? They do it in a subtle way, without saying the word communism, but I can recognize it. I recognize the language, I can recognize the rhetoric. From growing up in the communist country, in the Soviet Union, I can tell you from my own experience, it's the same rhetoric, language, style, vocabulary, and intent. I was an avid reader as a child, and in addition to books, I read a lot of communist newspapers. And mind you, there were no other newspapers. But what else it does? On a different level, what it does, it also grooms students to turn to only those news outlets in the future, even if they describe certain topics objectively right now. By looking only at those sources, the students don't know that other outlets exist at all. They don't know that, let's say, National Review exists, Daily Wire exists, Epoch Times, Prager University, Newsmax, Hill State College, Federalist, Washington Free Beacon, American Thinker, etc. Students don't know that those outlets exist at all. And later, when students grow up, they will turn to those what's familiar to them. That's all they would know from the featured sites, sources. That's all they're going to be groomed to know that exists. One may say maybe these articles present an objective picture of whatever they are talking about. When I was studying what some of the articles were saying, they present an objective picture. And I can tell you that so many are not. For example, in the activism article, we all play a unique role in a collective liberation. That's communist lingo. They promote disruptive tactics, a way to disrupt normal business or activities. They present certain pictures that only prevent one side of activism, but not the other. Look at those pictures, kids know this activism exists, but they don't know the other one exists. For example, only one picture of BLM. They know that exists, but there's no picture, let's say, about a pro-life protest rally. They're not exposed to that. In another article, they are calling, there's a phrase, best-selling schlock novelist Ayn Rand. It's absolutely anti-Semitic swipe at her. Ayn Rand, Jewish woman that came from St. Petersburg, Soviet Union. And schlock in Yiddish means goods of inferior quality or trash. So basically the author calls Ayn Rand garbage novelist in the Yiddish slang. And that article was on individualism, for example. And he doesn't mention that her individualism was actually driven by the Soviet tyranny of the collective she saw in the Soviet Union. And there's a number. I can find those articles I printed that illustrate my point. I can pass it around. I have highlighted it. So that's my reason for blocking the featured sites district-wide.
Thank you. That's a well thought out report. Lots of information. Darren, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I have a couple things. I want to thank Ed Services for making the process very thorough, easy to follow for somebody who's not an educator. I've said this many, many times. When you get elected to the school board, you don't get a magic pill that says you now know how curriculum is developed, how it is followed, what the state standards are. So thank you very much. It was an incredibly valuable opportunity for me. We are never going to find, as you said, Leslie, we are never going to find the perfect text. And I don't care what the topic is. I want to take time to thank the staff members, other than the district office staff, the actual teachers who helped guide me through the process. You know, I felt like a student some days sitting at Mrs. Brainerd's table, and that was incredibly valuable. She's passionate. She is the epitome of what I expect out of a history teacher, in every sense of the word. And I think we have to put a little. Is she back there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, she is.
Oh, well.
We'll hear from her in a minute.
So, having said that, I think that curriculum adoption is an incredibly important thing for this body, but we also have to be realistic and understand that there is no perfect topic, and we do have to trust our teachers to carry out board direction, which is make this non-biased. And if we get reports of biased delivery, I'm not going to jump in a classroom and deal with it. I'm going to bring it to this body, and we're going to address it. And if this body agrees, we're going to give Dr. Thurman direction to make those changes, or make sure that our staff is adhering to board direction. So I enjoyed the process. I cannot do that for every textbooks that we have. We spent over 20 hours in that process alone. And if we do that and we did one unit. If we do that for every text that we are putting out in front of our teachers, we will never get anything adopted. It will just take us too much time. We have to make sure that we give sound direction to our superintendent, and our superintendent has to make sure that direction is carried out in the classroom. And I'm a proponent of that moving forward in the process. I think Brian understands where we're coming from as a board. I think our board policy is very clear, and I'm happy I went through it, but boy, we just can't pull our teachers out of the classroom for that period of time, for that amount of time, for every single textbook, for every single lesson in every single textbook. So when it comes time to vote, I think I've pretty much established how I intend on voting, but boy, great job. Thank you, Mrs. Brainerd. Nice work.
Okay, so we had the staff report, we've heard our speaker cards, and we've heard from ad hoc members. The rest of the board, do you have anything you'd like to ask, or any comments on what you've heard tonight?
Clarifying questions. So according to the slide presentation on the second slide, you show on the timeline that we missed a state adoption cycle in 2009 and 2017. You also mentioned the Williams Act. So I guess my question is, when exactly are we supposed to adopt if we've missed it twice? I mean, I'm asking this clarifying question, and then I have some others to go along with it. I'm seeking these answers to these questions because I'm like, Maya just mentioned that, kind of gave a proposal. Don't access any of these sites, use the current textbook, just add supplements, to fix what it's lacking. That's one choice. Another choice is to use a textbook that we a new one. Another choice is to not use a textbook at all, but then we would have problems with that because the state requires one, right? So I think that it'd be helpful to know what the timeline is and what the penalties are for not following exactly what the state wants us to do.
Sure. So ed code, I have both ed codes here for you. I'm just going to read a little excerpt from 60605. Just they're notated in the presentation, and it's about that it is the intent of the legislator that textbooks, instructional materials, and supplemental instructional materials be deemed to be aligned with the content standards pursuant to subdivisions and be deemed consistent with the content and cycles of curriculum framework adopted by the state board pursuant to subdivision of the textbook, instructional materials, and supplemental instructional materials, or a combination of any such materials are aligned to the content standards adopted and pursuant. So that's the piece of the cycle, right? That's the part that we're missing. In addition to, it says in LEA, so there's a few things that can happen. I did some research after you asked the last time.
Yeah, I'm asking again. I'm sorry.
Right, no, I totally understand. So if we are expected, or if we deem that we are out of compliance for Williams, from what I've gathered from my research, if we're making progress, we're in pilot, then we don't need to claim that we're not meeting the Williams sufficiency, okay? But if we are out of compliance, Ed Code says that the LEA will be expected to remediate any insufficiency of instructional materials within 2 months of the beginning of the school year, right?
Okay.
So there are fines that can be put on a district if they're not meeting Williams. You're subject to potential, I hate to even use this word, but litigation if we're not meeting Williams, or providing the materials that we need to use in the classroom to meet the legislation that's been passed, and the state standards. And then the framework isn't the required component to it. The framework is that cycle piece that comes with it, and it helps us understand how we should be teaching the standards. The framework is where we have, I think we talked about this before, and we definitely did in the ad hoc committee. The framework marries that legislation, like the FAIR Act and a lot of the other legislation that we looked at in the ad hoc committee, with the state standards and how we can put them together. Our current materials don't address any of that legislation or any of the new topics that have happened since. They also don't have any of the supports for our English learners, our special education students, any of the technology advancements that teachers and students would use that they need for their 21st century skills. And so there's a lot more than just the content that needs to be updated with our textbook materials.
So I guess the question again, because you're saying that we need to do it as soon as possible. So I'm looking at this. In 2005, it says that we adopted the history, social science textbooks. Actually, that took a process. It was actually 2 years, because I remember voting the last one, which was the AP courses. And so then all of a sudden, I mean, it feels like all of a sudden when you just adopt it, it's like now there's an adoption cycle in 2009. So what happened there? Were we just grandfathered in because we just,
No, we don't automatically not meet Williams when we miss one. It seems that things run in threes, and so when we are out of compliant for something, for example, in the LCAP in a broad course of study, right? We talked about earlier this year when we passed the health course, that we're now on our third year of researching and figuring out health for middle school. They become more, they pay more attention with each year that we haven't made any progress towards fixing where we're out of compliance with Ed Code. In addition, if we were subject to FPM or Federal Program Monitoring, and we were to have findings, we would have to rectify the situation immediately. So the sooner we start a pilot, and I think that's a big difference between a pilot and an adoption, right? We still have time as we review these materials during pilot to have that feedback survey, to have time to look and to pinpoint if there are areas that we need to look closely at for bias, or to make sure we have a counter article or something from a different outlet that shows a different perspective of it. I think that our history teachers did a really good job during the ad hoc committee in expressing that when we talked about bias in the committee, that we would never tell students one side. We would always encourage them to look at all sides, and that we would not just put one article in front of them. Like they were Ms. Phillips and Mr. Drum could help, clarify what the teacher said in there with their teaching practices.
I'm not questioning any of that. I'm
Okay.
just looking at the nuts and bolts.
Oh,
of
okay.
When do we have to do what? So, as I am very aware,
Mhm.
the cycle seems to be every 10 years. So, according to this, we should have done this in 2016. It's 2023, in another 3 years, we're going to be in that cycle again, and we're going to have to do it all again.
It will be like where we're at our cycle. Kind of like when we did 2005 and we were behind that cycle, we were okay. We're making progress toward, and as long as we have materials that are meeting all of the needs, we
Okay.
would have another couple cycles to go before we'd be in the same situation we're in right now.
That was my concern. I
Yeah.
was like, oh, well.
No, we're not
we
going to do it
this
right now and then have to do it again in 2 years. No.
Okay. So, so basically, whatever we do now is going to satisfy the state
For
when-
7 to
when
8
it-
years.
Okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay. So that's helpful to know, because I'm not sure if everybody really knew that, and I certainly didn't know that was going to satisfy the state, because I know it's every 10 years you were supposed to do it. So what I'm just, because I know this is informational, but my comment about all this is that it's become very apparent nationwide that parents want to have some kind of voice about the curriculum that's being taught. In this entire process, for me, this was not about the delivery of the teacher. It had to do with the curriculum, had to do with, as you mentioned, the bias and it being balanced. And so, to me, this process that we went through, we tried it out. I don't think it really worked like we wanted it to. I think Maya's spot on. It was good to go through it. It was a great education for board members. However, I think we need to come up with something different where we can include our community in this process. It's not as time intensive, that is less, with everybody getting together. So that's what I'm proposing, that we come up with something different. And it could simply be the same exact process we've always done, but including the community in at certain points of that process. So it doesn't overburden staff. Something like that. But I'm not saying what that is, because I don't believe that's really my role to say that. But I'm just suggesting that we come up with something, because I think the voice of our community, to me, having them come together and agreeing with what we're doing is a win-win for curriculum, if we can do that. So anyways, I know we're not voting on this, it's informational.
Right. Thank you. And Dan, did you have something?
Yeah,
to say about
thank you. As a genuine old guy, I can bring up some history that maybe not everyone in this room is aware of. I'm going to bring up a name. His name is Howard Zinn. Howard Zinn was a Marxist who wrote the history books for United States schools for decades, with a built-in bias, which might explain why many young Americans can't tell you anything about the Constitution of the United States or civics or other parts of American history. Now, earlier tonight, we heard about concern over speculative impact of Hillsdale College and the Heritage Foundation. Mr. Zinn was not speculative. His books were in our schools for 2 decades, impacting our kids. That would explain why parents today are very concerned about the curriculum that their kids are exposed to. Thank you.
To add something. Sure. So what we can do with the process, Roger, probably take the textbooks after they go through that rubric process, like the books went last year, after the stuff is done with them, and just look for what our task is. Maybe in the form of open workshop, just look at things we are concerned about, political bias, so we don't need to involve staff so heavily, because that's compliance can be done by the teachers in advance, like they always do. Also, if we only pilot one unit, would I think you told me, but if you can say for the record, so we are going to purchase all the books, or how we're going to pilot the unit that's supposed to be taught in the spring, but it's not going to be taught before we vote the books. How it's going to look like.
Are we moving on to the next agenda item?
Yeah, I mean, we'll finish up with this one. So,
Just to kind of piggyback, Roger, on what you were saying, the intention behind the pilot materials going to both school site council and having that survey available with the materials and on the website for community members and parents to provide any potential bias or concerns about a textbook would be available during the entire pilot process and brought back as evidence along with the teacher's evaluation of the entire books. So when we do a pilot, it's a semester-long pilot. In some cases, like we're going to get to more instructional materials here in a minute for approval, board approval, it was a little bit longer than a semester. During that whole time, we would be collecting evidence for anybody who was reviewing those books independently, and they could provide that feedback in a form of that survey. And then that information can also be shared with teachers as they build consensus and before deciding to bring a text back to the board for adoption. And that information would also be shared back with the board.
Yeah, I mean, I'm clearly aware of what you were proposing. Because you're looking at the time frame, we need to be on the course of the pilot so that we're in compliance, and we can continue the process through the pilot process. However, I think the board wants to be proactive in the future as we move forward on curriculum. But it's a learning experience, right? So.
Okay, so with that, let's move on to the next item, which is related. So this is item F5, and that's the report on pilot of instructional materials for history, social science. I do have cards, so Leslie, if you'll give your portion, and then we'll take the speaker slips.
Members of the board, as you heard in the previous agenda item, the instructional materials that have been selected by teachers and administration are being brought back to the board for the purpose of pilot. The only addendum to this item from last year, aside from the dates, would be the removal of the Savas materials from previously brought forth. All materials have been shared with the board previously and will be available at the district office for review. In addition, beginning in the 22-23 school year, all school site councils review pilot materials and provide feedback, along with any instructional feedback survey being made available for input from community, staff, and families throughout the pilot to ensure all voices are considered throughout the pilot and adoption process. To directly answer Ms. Phillips' question about the timeline. So we typically put, when we bring materials, we do a proposed date of the pilot process. There has been some requests, and Ms. Phillips brought up a good point about the World War II unit, and only piloting the World War II unit would mean that we wouldn't pilot until after spring break. There's a desire among teachers and administrators, if we are going to pilot all materials for history, social science, for us to move forward with piloting the entire book through the World War II unit so that we can provide a very thorough evaluation of all components of the book like we would on any of the other texts for any of the other courses. If that isn't desirable, then they would not pilot until they get to the World War II unit, because we wouldn't want to pull World War II to fall when it doesn't hit in chronological sequence for the information that was provided. So this is an information item. However, it's also in most recent history been more of a discussion item as well, but this is an information item traditionally when we bring materials forward for pilot.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and take these speaker slips. Next, we have Robin Brainerd.
Hi, everybody.
Nice to see you, Ms. Brainerd.
Nice to see you, Mrs. Perfect. Thank you very much. Mr. Drum, I don't know what to say. Because if I start talking, I'm going to start crying, and then that's going to look really bad. But thank you, sir. I really appreciate your kind words. I thank you for allowing me to be part of the ad hoc committee. and for everything that you guys have expressed over the last few months about the work that we've been done, the work that's been done by the staff and the teachers on that committee. In case you don't know, I've been a teacher for 36 years. 30 of those years I've been right here in Ramona. I'm the head of the Social Studies Department. I've taught U.S. History, Civics, AP US, and AP Gov for the majority of my time at RHS, and I've played a significant role in RHS's WASC accreditation process over the last 20 years. Because of all of this, I place an immense value in knowing our students have access to the best instructional materials and resources possible. Nothing is more important than truly preparing our students for the real world. Students like Katie, who I am lucky enough to have in class right now, are getting ready to head out into the real world. All right, a world where bias exists, where the ability to fact check, to civilly discuss an issue, and to support your opinions with facts and details are required skills. Our students deserve to have nothing but the best, the most up-to-date materials, which not only address the content standards, but help them develop these required skills. Our students need to be critical thinkers, educated voters, and productive citizens in the 21st century. And I hope that you all believe that it is your responsibility as decision makers to make this a priority. I'm excited at the opportunity as I'm winding my career down to helping, the pilot for all social studies classes, especially hopefully in the coming year. Like most careers, teaching and education has evolved. What I do today with my students is very different from what I did with Leslie and Melissa, who I both had in class. That's how old I am. And we need to meet our students where they are. To know that the next set of freshmen may be able to have new instructional materials and resources for their entire high school career is very positive. For the next class of sophomores, juniors, and seniors to be able to take advantage of an extensive, up-to-date amount of resources provided with every text is critical. To know that teachers will have the expanded resources to use in support of our special ed and our EL students is really refreshing. While I realize the initial thought was to go forward with just U.S. history, I hope you recognize the value of approving all pilots for the coming school year. I hope that you all have a better understanding of the process that the staff and the teachers go through in evaluating and selecting instructional materials. I hope that with that understanding comes trust and a belief that we, the teachers and district staff, want nothing but the best for the students and families of Ramona Unified School District. Many in the incoming senior class were born the year the current texts were published, and the underclassmen weren't even born yet. It is truly time to pilot and adopt new materials. While I recognize the process has been valuable, that the initial plan was to move forward with only U.S. history, and that other social science pilots would go through the same process in the years to come, I hope you consider that the time spent by the staff and teachers to prepare for each meeting, the time teachers were out of the classroom, and the cost associated with the process for just one text when you think about what we're doing. I also hope that you will consider allowing the U.S. history pilot, as Mrs. Wilson was talking about, to include more than just World War II. You guys all talked about it. The timeline for piloting and adopting needs to get started at the beginning of the year. World War II and U.S. history usually gets covered in February and March, making the adoption timeline extremely difficult to make.
Brainerd,
yeah.
That's time.
All right, no problem. If there's something that you need, if you have a question, you know where I'm at.
Thank you so much. Seems so disrespectful to cut off the teacher, but thank you.
It's sometimes just a good thing to cut you off.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your understanding. All right, our next speaker is Bob Studi. I'm used to sitting there as long as the teacher wants to keep you. You're staying put, so.
Hi. So on F5, the way that the agenda item's listed is it says that world history is going to be piloted, but during the workshop or what have you, it was communicated flat out it was strictly going to be the piloting of the World War II chapter. So my question is okay, if it's only going to be piloted as World War II chapter, is that what then is being asked to be adopted when that comes along? And had I been able to, and I would have shared the things that were of my concerns of the book. I have a whole list of things in this book that I consider bias. I don't want to censor these things, but when I say bias, that means that something's been put in without the contrary view being put there. And there's things on how Reagan was represented. There's things that the Tea Party, that it just is a sideways slam on them, rather than saying that they're just a grass unit or a grass movement, but that there were people funding behind it. And it was to kind of take away. That's on the light side. On the heavy side is under domestic terrorism, right smack dab in the middle. It goes on and defines what domestic terrorism is. Then it goes immediately to a George Soros-backed group that's called the Southern Poverty Law Center. And on page 935, the Southern Poverty Law Center maintains a list of organizations that it designates as hate groups. It doesn't give the contrary, and it goes into what a hate group is. Now, the publisher covered themselves, said that it believes, but it's put here right in the smack dab middle of this book. And what are some of those hate groups that have been put on there? Because try Pacific Justice Institute, try the Family Research Council, and mainly because they have difference of belief on gay marriage. And one wants to fill one the other, and to have a difference of belief, that's fine. But to label somebody as a hate group is really wrong. And it approaches a few areas such as this, and these are the things that I'm concerned on that wouldn't be heard. We need to give a way for parents to be able to be heard. I couldn't be heard. So if we're going to have surveys, did you get what I shared in the survey? I didn't see it up there. And I had shared this kind of stuff, not the Southern poverty, but that I had some of the things that are concerned.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is an information piece. I did have a couple of questions, though. I'm seeing some textbooks here, copyright 2018, 2019. Are those the newest versions that are available? Because someday we're going to look at a chart that says, oh, you adopted materials that were 5 years old, and now we're 10 years later, the materials are too old. Nothing newer?
No, those are the most recent. If by the time we do pilot, there is a more recent edition, we'll be sure to update the board and go with the more recent edition, but the current materials that are on here are the most recent materials at this time.
So, since this is an information about piloting materials, will these books be piloted in entirety or just certain chapters?
They would be piloted for the intent would be that they would be, or anticipation would be that we would pilot them for the fall semester. And then what those units are, and I don't know for each of those, we would pilot for the fall semester, and for U.S. history bring back in December. And then because U.S. history was the selected text and the largest area of concern from the board, and the one the ad hoc committee dove deeper into, we would definitely want some direction from the board if it would be allowable to do the same with the U.S. history text as we would be doing with the other texts, and pilot in the fall also, and through the World War II unit.
Okay. Did the ad hoc committee members get the whole textbook or just a chapter?
They got the whole textbook, and after each ad hoc committee meeting, we did ask for feedback back on the process. And after the last meeting, there was Mr. Studi asked for a way to share his information, or for anybody to be able to share their information about the remainder parts of the textbook. And the only person who did share that information was Mr. Studi from the whole ad hoc committee, and that information was provided to the superintendent's office and I believe shared with maybe the board.
Okay, so the next thing that the board would do, since this is information, the next action would be to adopt materials, and that would be in December?
In December and potentially after that World War II unit was, unless board gave direction to just do the fall semester pilot, and then everything would come back in December with all evidence from surveys, school site council meetings, teacher recommendation. There could be no recommendation for pilot, right? We've seen that before where teachers have come back and said, this doesn't work for Ramona Unified. We need to find another set of textbooks to look at. And that is potential, but we would anticipate bringing it back in December.
Okay. And prior to that December adoption item on our agenda, would the ad hoc committee meet again, or would there be a community meeting at all where parents and community members can weigh in on the materials, maybe site council reps, something like that?
In addition to school site council and the survey, if we wanted to do a community forum like we did when we first launched the new California state standards, there would be no problem in Ed Services manning the boardroom for people to come in and look at materials and ask questions and provide feedback. That would be absolutely. I sat through with many, many families when the math standards were rolled out and looked at old standards and new standards and looked at the materials and did deep dive shoulder to shoulder. So we would be happy to do that if that is.
Okay. So that's something the board can give direction on, as we move forward. Okay. Any other questions about this? It's just information. Do we have all the information that we need tonight?
I'm just curious, what happens with the books if after the pilot you decide not to use them? You send them back to the publisher, or it's wasted money? You buy them, you can't return them, or what?
We do not buy books. When we're doing a district-wide adoption, the publishers provide them to us for free. Because we are such, the potential purchase is large enough that they, and yes, we package them back up and we send them back to them, and then they send them to somebody else to pilot if we don't adopt.
So books for pilot arrive for free?
Arrive for free, yes.
Can you tell me the process of the school site council reviewing books and curriculum? How does that work, and what is the time that's being put into that? Because they usually only meet, maybe 4 or 5 times a year. They don't meet.
Yeah, I would say it's introduced at one meeting and give them the opportunity, and then it's brought back to a second meeting to see if there's any. The principals really run their school site council meetings. I'm not at those meetings. They do inform their school site council that it's here for review if there's any questions. They provide the information in the courses study to make sure they understand that piece of it, and they. I don't know if they have the teachers help present that information or not. I don't really have that information. We leave that to the discretion of the site leader.
Yeah, I don't have confidence in that for curriculum.
So let's talk about that. Give some thought to it and bring something back here. If you can come up with a plan that gets us good community input before adoption, that would be wonderful. And we have some time to work on this. So it's not done. We're just information tonight, and action won't happen until December. So let's try and think about how we want to move forward with that. Sound good? Yeah. Everybody's good? Everybody's been heard? Great. So at this point, we will move on to item F6, and that's report on pilot of instructional materials for creative writing in film, literature, and composition.
Oh boy.
President Perfect and Governing Board, in January you approved 2 new courses of study opening up opportunities for students to engage with the English language arts standards in new and engaging ways. This information item brings forward the accompanying pilot materials for each of the courses listed, creative writing and film, literature, and composition. The materials will be piloted during first semester of the 23-24 school year, and the team anticipates bringing them back to the board for approval in December.
Okay. This is information. We've received information. Do we have any questions about that? We're good? I know Maya has the book and she's been poring over it. I have it, but I haven't cracked it yet. But I will. It's in a prime spot. Okay. We're all good? All right, moving forward. Item F7, approval of instructional materials for interior design and independent study. For independent study.
Board members, tonight is definitely the night for instructional materials. Previously, the board received information about the pilot for the board-approved course in interior design for independent study. Future-bound teacher and site admin have reviewed and evaluated the materials and found success with their students. The materials have been available for community and parent review out in the hallway and have been shared at a school site council meeting. The recommendation is for the board to approve the instructional materials for interior design.
Okay, so this was
This is the online
action, right?
course, the online one.
This is, yeah. So, wait, now I'm mixed up. Okay.
This is not an
This is
online course.
This was information piece, right?
I thought
This
this
is
was the one
approval.
that you were saying. It's like a online independent study.
This is an independent study
gotcha.
course because it's at Future Band, but it's not an
Right.
online course.
Oh, okay. I thought it was. Okay.
Okay, so this is an action item, and it is approval of the materials for interior design for independent study. Does anybody want to move approval?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you very much. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Dan and Roger. All in favor?
Aye.
Very good.
But there might be bias between like formal design versus decorative design.
I was just going to say, nothing controversial
Yeah,
there, right?
I don't know.
Nobody's feeling passionate about this one? Okay. All right, item F8, and that was unanimous, right? I called it? All in favor, yeah? Unanimous, all right. Item F8, approval of instructional materials for financial algebra.
Last but not least, from Education Service tonight is also related to instructional materials. After nearly a year-long pilot, the high school teachers have completed the pilot of financial algebra, advanced algebra with financial applications. During this pilot, students were engaged in higher-level mathematical thinking while realizing the true application of math in their life. The materials have been available for review, and the teachers and site administrators have received feedback from parents during school site council meetings. The recommendation is for the board to approve the instructional materials presented for financial algebra. And as a parent of a student in this course, he has really enjoyed the financial algebra course this year.
Sure, that's what he tells you.
He was really intrigued by the investment competition that they had.
Right,
Oh.
right, very good.
Yeah.
Do we have any questions about this? Do we have a motion to approve?
I'll move for approval.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That motion carries unanimously. Okay, moving on. All right, Human Resources, Section G. We had a few items on consent. One action item, and that is G4, approval of uniform complaint quarterly report, Williams case complaints.
Members of the board, the district is required to post notices throughout the district regarding opportunities to file complaints, formal complaints regarding instructional materials, facilities, teacher vacancies, misassignments, and other areas. This report is then provided to you on a quarterly basis before being forwarded to the County Office of Education for the reporting period of January 1st through March 31st. On the second page, reporting to you that there was one formal complaint filed by a parent, personnel complaint, that has been resolved, is the report.
Very good. So this is an action item to approve the report. Do I have a motion?
I'll move approval.
Thank you.
I'll second to approve the report.
All right, Darren and Roger, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And Tony, I don't know how you got off so easy when Leslie had all those
I'm going to talk
gymnastics
I'm going to talk
do.
to Leslie later about how to do this.
Right.
Ad services show.
Apparently. Okay, thank you very much. We are now on Section H, Administrative Services. We had a number of items that were on consent. Moving down to our first action item, and that is H10, and that is approval of resolution number 2022 what? Okay. Thank you.
Because you're on.
Yeah.
Because you just skipped.
I gotcha.
consent. That's what she knows.
Yeah. Okay. I'll get it. Okay. Item H10, approval of resolution number 20-22-23-33 to piggyback purchase of diesel buses. And I'm having a deja vu. I think we've seen something like this before. Okay.
I'll move to approve.
All right. We know what it is. All right. Dan's moving to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
All right. Any questions, concerns, comments? It was Dan and then Roger.
No, it just saves us a lot of time, which is money of staff. So
Right.
we don't have to do the bidding process ourselves because we can piggyback off of somebody else's bid. So-
Very good. All right.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Oh, aye.
Aye. That motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And Roger, in his clerical capacity here, is keeping me on track with our speaker slips. And I do have a speaker slip here that was item H9 and H14. H9 was consent. Would you like to speak on that now, or do you want to save it for H14? Thank you very much. Okay, I thought that's what she would say.
I know, but I just wanted to
Yeah,
make sure.
I appreciate you keeping me on track. Sometimes I get rolling. All right, item H11 is approval of resolution number 2022-23-34 to close Fund 19. And would someone like to explain what that is?
Okay, good evening, members of the board and Dr. Thurman. So at the previous January board meeting, there was a resolution that was made to establish a foundation, which was a special reserve Fund 19, and that's something at the San Diego County Treasury. That was specifically for the McAllister Trust donation that was received for scholarships. After additional research on unallowed investments, we found out that we actually didn't need to have that because the governing board approved the recommendation to invest in McAllister Track Scholarship Endowment into U.S. Treasury bonds. So although we never actually officially opened up a Fund 19, we still need to take a public approval, governing board approval to the board to close it. So it's just a formality.
So because we opened it, now we need to close it?
We didn't actually open it. We said on paper this way and in a public meeting that it was board approved, so we need to do the same thing, just to technically close it, even though there's been nothing opened.
All right,
Okay,
would anybody like to move?
I move approval to disapprove.
To close.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
That motion carries. Thank you very much. Item H12 is approval of gifts.
Okay, so the governing board, we are lucky that we were able to receive a huge approval of gifts of musical instruments. Thank you to Ms. Wilson's mother for speaking up for this. So this list is of all the items that we have received, and this action is for your approval to receive those gifts.
And this is going to be used at elementary, middle, and high school, just wherever the need is.
Yes.
Currently, the elementary music teacher and the high school music teacher are working together to inventory and then disseminate where the need is.
Nice. Do we know what the brands are? Are they like really high quality, like super high quality?
According to Dr. Thurman,
They're
free.
School equipment.
they are actually very high quality at the ukuleles in the back of my car, and they all look brand new.
Okay.
Most things Del Mar Unified purchases are of
good.
high quality,
Okay.
and the instruments, when Dr. Thurman was looking at the pictures that I brought in, he was like, they want to give us what?
The drums are amazing, especially the timpanis. They're very high-end, that most symphonies would want.
But that's your forte.
Is this
so, you know.
is this an area where you have experience?
Yes, he's a
Played
drummer.
timpanis and symphonies before,
Okay,
yes.
very good. Okay.
I would like to move
Me too,
to approve
but-
this right away.
I haven't seen those high quality timpanis. Okay, thank you, Dan. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Tie goes to the lady. We'll give it to Maya. Okay. Well, this is very exciting, and I will be interested to see where 24 violins and 16 ukuleles go. Yeah, very good. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. Excellent. All right, we are now on item H13, and that's approval of resolution number 2022-23-35, adopting and approving the Joint Powers Authority Agreement and Joint Government Financial Services Joint Powers Authority.
Whoa.
That's a mouthful for that one. So in relation to the McAllister Trust, trying to research to find who could help our district with opening up a U.S. Treasury account, we reached out to San Diego County Office of Education, to their business division, for guidance on this. And they referred us to actually a contract that we have, which is the Governmental Financial Services Joint, well, at that time it's the Government Financial Services, GFS. We've used them before when we were looking into maybe doing a loan a few years back, that we actually were lucky enough to not have to take. So we were part of this group at the time. So since then, they've actually worked with multiple other school districts on becoming a JPA, a Joint Powers Authority. So when we reached out to work with them and try to get a contract to help us with the McAllister Trust and opening up that brokerage account, they actually said that we needed to be part of their JPA. And since we already had done work with them on a contract previously and worked with them, we actually need to have this, it's a resolution to join the JPA along with the other school districts so that we can use their services.
Okay, and I see there is a cost involved.
Yes, there's a cost involved. And besides just doing one item in here, the JPA, this group, they'll help us with a lot of other things. It's basically, it's an extension of business services. So it could be real estate sales, it could be OPEB. If you need help with financial modeling, they have a whole host of services of experts that could help.
So I assume the fund, the McAllister Fund, the revenue we make from that is going to be paying these fees. Is that the idea?
No, that was not something that has been brought up. This would be something that would be funded with the general fund. The whole McAllister Trust, that is going to be used to pay for scholarships at the high school.
Okay. That's my only concern. It should fund itself. If there's an administrative fee, and the idea is that we're, even though it's scholarships, it should fund itself. So I have a concern about this.
I can definitely look into that to see if that's allowable.
Can we pull it before we find this out? It would be best, I think. Yeah, it should. Yeah, just financial sense. It doesn't make sense to use the general budget to support scholarships. I think that's a problem.
Well, it seems that this is more than just supporting scholarships, but the scholarship account was the impetus for finding this.
I understand that, but
so it's fine.
It's also saying for the next 3 years.
Right.
Does that mean for another 3 years after that, it's another 5,000, and it just keeps repeating?
It's for those 3 years, correct? It is. We saw the benefit in admin services of using this company for other services besides just opening up the brokerage account. Like I said, if we needed help with selling any land that the district has, they would actually help us with the whole beginning to end process of that. Or if we had an OPEB account that we needed to set up, they would help us from the beginning to end.
So
I could find out and get more research back on that if that's allowed, because since the check, it was given to us as in a will.
Right.
That would be something, that was kind of the hard part with this. Like, we've had this check since December, and we haven't been able to deposit it because of trying to make sure that we're following the rules on what the will said, and also depositing it properly for public school accounting processes. That's where it's been kind of hung up, and why it's gone back to put it into Fund 19, or if we want to try to get more interest on it, the way to go is doing that U.S. Treasury bond. So that's kind of where we're at with it, but I could definitely find out more if you'd like me to investigate the cost.
Yeah, so I mean, if this is a service that we're paying for and we're going to be using it for other things, then there still should be some percentage of cost that the revenues,
like the interest,
this gift should be paying for. Yeah, there should be some kind of percentage. I just feels wrong not to do it that way. But
I can definitely follow up and let you know if that's something that we can do that.
Okay, thank you so much.
Alyssa, you said it can also help us with OPEB, real estate, and there was a third thing, and I didn't catch it.
And that's what I was just pulling up to see. There was a lot of different things that they could help us with.
we could just bring it up next.
It seems like, yeah, we may bring this back.
Yeah.
There was a
Okay.
lot.
But that is something that interests me, and I would appreciate it if you would elaborate a little bit.
Yeah, I definitely can.
So this is an action item, but if no one is proposing an action at this time, then we can see it again on a future agenda. Some more information. Is there any detriment that happens?
Yes, I was going to ask if I could bring that up. The one thing is that we're running out of time with getting the check deposited.
Stale date.
If we don't, not stale dated, but just trying to get a scholarship out for this school year. So if we wanted to try and open it, so what I would propose for something to do with that is, as of now, I can provide more information on all the additional services that they could do, and I can show you those. But as now, as if we use the unrestricted general fund to pay for the service, because it's not just for the McAllister Trust, it's for a lot, it's like I said, it's an extension of business services. So if I could even get an allocation set up of how we could pay for it and validate that we could maybe use interest proceeds to help pay for a portion of it, because it's just for the initial setup of this, that's it. It's not ongoing for the years. The other few years will be for, and I'm sorry, maybe that was me not explaining it correctly.
Okay.
The other few years afterward would be the extension of help for business services, of what it could do for us as a district if we needed guidance.
Okay, so it's really just the initial 2,500.
The first setup.
Well, why don't
That's
you
what
make
it is.
that motion if that's what you're comfortable with?
What do you mean?
That we not do it for 3 years right now. We can approve that later if we get approved the setup now.
What we could do
so we can
is,
get rolling with the scholarship.
when we understand what the service, the next 3 year service, what that is, we can just put that on on the list for contracted services. That would be a separate thing, separate from this.
So we can or approve move
Yeah.
forward with trying to do
Do
the
you
action.
need us to commit to 3 years in order to get started?
From what I have gotten back from, yes, it's a 3-year contract.
But it's necessary in order mechanically for her to be able to deposit the check, yes?
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, I can move forward. We need to look in the process of the
ongoing cost?
Yeah, it funding itself. It should
Definitely.
100% fund itself, and then, so any additional costs that go with that, and then whatever's left over, whatever the revenues that we make annually, that goes to fund the scholarship. The scholarships, we're gonna give more than one out.
I can definitely follow up and provide all that information.
Yeah, thank you.
I think the issue is, this is a membership that covers a lot of different services. It's
Right.
not, it can't all be attributed to a scholarship.
Right, and
So breaking out the cost for the scholarship specifically
There should be
just
some.
may not be
There should be an
practical.
administrative fee that the district, I guess the easiest way to say it is, if we're managing this and we're issuing checks and all the scholarships, there should be an administrative fee. Usually it's like 4%. I mean, I think that's the lowest, but there should be something that it's not coming out of our costs. It should be completely self-sustainable.
We have that, that's how like all of our restricted grant programs work. We do have administrative costs that we can bill out towards those. So
Okay.
I'm following what you're saying there.
Okay, so we're in agreement. As long as we do that, then I'm good.
So if we're going to approve, someone should make that motion.
Well, I'm comfortable moving forward with it as is, without those administrative costs. I mean, this is a direct benefit to a number of our students. I have no problem with district staff supporting the process and the administration of the scholarship. It is directly related to our students. So I'm not in favor of putting that specific restriction upon it. I'm in favor of moving forward as written. So I'll make a motion that we approve Resolution 2022-23-35, supporting the Joint Powers Authority Agreement and joining the Government Financial Services JPA.
Do we have a second? I'll second. I'm with you on that. It would be nice if the cost of administering the scholarship could come from the proceeds, and I think Melissa will try to make sure that that happens if it's at all possible. I'm comfortable with that. This isn't a lot of money, and I would, however, like to have a better understanding of the services that are available to the school district by joining this Joint Powers Authority.
Yes, I'll do that.
Okay, so, anybody else have any questions or concerns? I'll just.
Well, the thing that bothers me is we have a gift coming to the school district that because of mechanisms, we're going to end up being out of pocket to deposit the gift and distribute the gift. It's going to cost us money for the gift. And I'm not, that doesn't make,
It's gonna, I would say that, as staff had stated, there are other services associated with this expenditure that, in my opinion, justify the expenditure. If we didn't have this grant or this gift coming before us, would we then support staff's recommendation to join this JPA? I think we probably would.
It's not a lot of money.
As long as the 4%, the administrative costs are obtained, I don't have any problem doing this.
I think part of the challenge that you would remember the McAllister Fund, the council for that was very specific in how we could do it. They did give us a little bit of leeway on that interest and how to do that, but we would need to get their blessing, so to speak, to use it, because it was very specific for scholarships at RHS, specifically in track, and using only a certain amount of the principal each year. So that's where a place we'd have to start, and I've talked with them already earlier when we were working on it, so we can talk to them and see, but I don't know if that would be something that they would consider.
For me to approve, I'm not saying no to the gift when I say what I'm saying. It's the process. We don't really know what it is. That's my concern. And it's going to cost the district to give a gift to somebody. I have a problem with that. I'm kind of concerned. And so, like anything, there needs to be checks and balances, and I feel like we don't know what those are. So we're being asked to vote on something we don't know. So unless I know that at least the administrative cost is going to be covered, which would be the bare minimum to maintain this, I don't think I can vote on it, and it's a procedural thing for me. It really comes down to good fiscal management. I just don't think that we're doing good fiscal management without really knowing what we're voting on, so I can't do that.
I did, sorry, when you were talking, the other things that they can do for it besides is helping us with potential land sales, consideration if we ever looked into a bond measure, improving the quality of the district's actuarial study, demographics, etc. So we use a company right now for actuarial study when they project any kind of retiree benefits, and there's a few things with year-end closing that we work with companies on, and that's part of it. So those are some of the other things that they do for it. But when you're talking about being fiscally sound on what we're doing with things, the other option we had with that other fund that we just closed, that was an option, but it had a lower interest-bearing account on that one because it was through the county treasury. So that's why this is kind of a weird situation where we're trying to get more interest in it. So we're doing something that's not normally a typical activity we would do with funds. We normally use the San Diego County Treasury to hold all of our cash. And going this way was something to try to have a bigger interest saving or an interest received, so we could have scholarships for a longer period of time.
So, like I said, for me, I need to know: can we have the 4% administrative fee, which I think is like pretty the lowest of the lowest on those, anyways. That's about as low as you go. So, if we can have that, then I would 100% support it. Without it, I can't.
Okay. Any other questions or concerns? We have a first, we have a second. I'll call it. All in favor? Aye.
Aye. It's a no for me.
All opposed?
I'm an aye.
Okay. And you're opposed?
I'm opposed.
No abstentions. That motion carries 4-1. Good conversation. Thank you for that. And Melissa, a little more information, in a board report or something. Thank you so much. All right, let's get a scholarship out to some kids, right? Okay, we are now on item H14, and that's Olive Pierce Middle School safety. It's an information piece. Who is doing that? I do have cards. So is someone introducing this topic? Okay, great.
Yes. Good evening, board, members of the public. We want to acknowledge some of the challenges at Olive Pierce Middle School, and we have some data here. We want to talk about some of the current measures that are in place, and then also some things that we're reviewing now to help the situation. And then there's been a request for resource officer or some type of law enforcement to be there, so we have the pricing for that as well that we received on April 5th. So the first data area there, you'll see total discipline incidents, and incidents is a kind of a broad term there. It includes fighting, bullying, harassment, vaping, horseplay, etc. So ed code violations to some extent. Not all of these are suspensions. They're just a list of discipline incidents to show, and the 22-23 is just a partial year. So current support measures include a TOA that was approved this evening, teacher on assignment, that will be added for additional supervisory and administrative support practices there, really just to increase the overall presence of caring adults. It's really valuable that it's a person from the site, not just an additional CSO or someone who's not connected to students and families there. We're working with the Sheriff's Department, and they are actually have been instructed to do very short weekly visits across the whole district. However, specifically for OPMS, Lieutenant Vangler and his team are going to be doing some regular visits there that are some planned, some unplanned, but just being there and being on campus. We've also switched to 2 lunches. That has improved the coverage there. We did that at the semester. We are offering compensation for teachers who are willing to provide extra supervision support, which we're very appreciative of. That is optional. And then we added an additional campus safety officer. We added the position and had 3 of them there, which represents 1 additional for what their allocation is. We had it for a short time. Right now we're down to 2. So there is, that position has been flown. We have, I think, 1 applicant right now. And so we're still moving forward with that. Some of the planned measures that just have not come through yet, and I don't have the date that these vape sensors were ordered, but I know they've been back ordered for some time. So we're really looking forward to that coming, because that's helpful in the restrooms. We had an issue with cameras. We went from 3 to 8 cameras, but we weren't able to use all 8. And so we're looking at a kind of like, I guess, to lack of a better word, like a server that, and with the licenses, that will be able to have more bandwidth for us to be able to utilize all of those. So I think that Tech Services has looked at those, that situation, to be able to utilize those. And so that purchase rec has also been initiated. It's not all vetted yet and not on the way yet. The other issue there, number 3, is the social emotional support. Many times, I've seen people's thoughts on law enforcement, CSOs, those kind of things, but usually these kind of situations come from an internal challenging situation or place, whatever that may be. And so we're looking at some models of additional student support, and there's lots of different options there. We're just looking at what that could contribute to the student body and to the struggles and the challenges that they're dealing with right now. The last item there is the cost for the full-time sheriff. The quote was for $410,000, but $85,000 of that was the one-time cost. That's for the car and all the equipment that goes in the car. But the ongoing amount would be $325,343 a year. So that's a significant issue.
Wait, just, can we have the information page up so that people can see the data that we're looking at? Thank you. I think we just went to a screensaver or something. Our agenda isn't there anymore.
I was just going to say that's an increase of $100,000 compared to last time we looked at this.
Yeah.
For the
Sheriff.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the problem is that the price, the cost is just astronomical to have one sheriff. And if we did it, it could be split between multiple campuses. It doesn't have, one person doesn't have to be on one campus. schools.
That's the price of 4 teachers.
I know, but I'm just saying, if we were to do it, the beauty of it is, we got 3 campuses all next to each other. I mean, and then we have other our campuses are all pretty close together. But 3 right next to you, I mean, you're really just walking back and forth.
I'm wondering if there's a profit built into that estimate. That's a lot of money.
It is.
It's what
Could be.
it's what the county sheriff charges us.
I did want to make...
We looked into this in depth. It has to be maybe 4 years ago.
We did.
4 or 5.
Yeah. And it was the same thing, you have to pay for the vehicle
Right.
and all that up front.
Government agencies are forbidden from making a profit. It's in the state constitution.
I would think so, but that's
So we could not offer our maintenance staff to go do maintenance on somebody's private business and make a profit. We just can't do that. Sheriff can't make a profit off this project. It is supposed to be their cost, their annual costs, including benefits, wages, all of the ramp ups of a deputy. And it's not just one deputy that they're charging. It's not one deputy 40 hours a week. It includes vacation, it includes sick leave, it includes all the other opportunities where a deputy must take time off.
At this point, I'd just like to pause the board conversation and get our speaker slips. So first up, we have Melissa Budvarson. Three? Roger, 3? 3? Thank you.
Good
Thank
evening. My name is Melissa Budvarson. I grew up in Ramona, and I attended OPMS as a middle schooler. My oldest daughter is in 6th grade at Hanson Elementary, and my husband and I are not confident that OPMS is a safe place for our child to attend next year. I have very fond memories of middle school. I had some amazing teachers, a few that are here tonight, and made many lifelong friends there. When I was in school, fights were few and far between, but I understand from family and friends whose children currently attend the school that multiple fights are occurring weekly. Bullying is rampant. Kids are vaping in the bathrooms. Kids are filming others who are trying to use the restroom, and children are afraid to use the restroom between classes due to the bullying and the harassment. My house is a block from the school, and my backyard faces the side of the middle school. During the day, as I'm working from home, I can hear kids yelling obscenities as they walk between classes with no adult supervision or intervention. Hanson Elementary is a safe, positive environment with amazing leadership and staff, and honestly, I'm afraid of the culture shock my child's going to go through going from that environment to this environment. We are concerned for her safety, we are concerned for her innocence, and we are concerned that if the bullying remains unchecked, it's only a matter of time before the unthinkable happens at OPMS. I'm glad to hear that a new principal has been identified. I wish she had stuck around. And hopefully that'll bring about positive changes to the school, but we cannot wait until next school year to start seeing changes. As an HR professional, I know firsthand it takes a long time for change of a culture to take place, and OPMS is no different. Changes need to be made now. If not, this school and the district are going to see concerned parents like myself sending their kids out of school or out of town, down the hill, to other schools or alternate schooling options. I don't like to express my concerns without offering solutions or suggestions, and I don't know what the solutions are, but some suggestions would be more adult supervision, which you addressed, tougher consequences for the offenders. Why do they keep coming back to the school and harassing and bullying the children who are there to learn? And also a more restrictive cell phone policy. Children should not have their cell phones out taking pictures throughout the day. I understand parents want their children to be reachable in case of emergency after school. That's fine, but there needs to be a policy where they stay in their backpacks, and that needs to be enforced. Thank you for your time.
Okay. Next up, Stephanie Moss.
My name is that on?
Yes, you're fine. Thank you.
My name is Stephanie Moss. I'm a parent to 4 kids here in the district, and I've been a very active parent volunteer on multiple PTA boards. And I believe that our school district should have a stricter district-wide cell phone policy. I believe cell phones are a huge contributing factor as to why students feel unsafe at school. There should be no cell phones allowed out of backpacks during school hours unless a teacher asks students to use them during class. Twin Peaks Middle School has a similar policy, along with consequences found on their website and also right here if you want to see them. On page 15, they have the consequences listed. Students are using cell phones and social media to record fights at school, cyberbullying other students, and using their phones to invade other students' privacy by recording them or taking a photo without their permission. They are then posting them to social media, magnifying the embarrassment for the student that is in the media. My own niece experienced this last week. She was made aware of a post of her on TikTok with an unflattering picture taken unknowingly with a horrible caption on it. Thankfully, she has supportive family who helped boost her up after this experience. However, not everyone is this lucky. The National Institute of Health said the nature of social media interactions, which are arm's length, makes negative commenting both easy and more frequent than in-person interactions with peers. An Ontario survey of middle and high school students showed that the odds of suicidal ideation, plans, and attempts were all significantly higher among those who had experienced cyberbullying, even after controlling for a range of potential confounders. Allowing cell phones out during school hours is raising the number of fights we are having. OPMS has had over 20 school fights this year that I personally know of, from my son attending. NBC South Florida states, as long as there have been schools, there have been school fights. The difference now is that most students have smartphones, so incidences are recorded and shared. Every time these types of videos are posted on social media, they fuel more violence. The majority of students aren't using phones for educational purposes. In fact, they are a distraction and are actually hurting our students' learning. An article by Guardian said completing homework was the least popular activity on children's phones, accounting for only 18%. But of course, you can't blame children. The different social media platforms can be quite a distraction when getting an assignment done. Harvard School of Education said the existing studies provide evidence that allowing phones in the classroom negatively impacts test scores and long-term learning retention. There are some correlational studies that suggest negative relationships between off-task device use and student achievement. Further, in psychology, research on multitasking generally finds negative effects on... Did I already read that? Yes. Research has shown that cell phones distract and negatively impact reaction times, performance, enjoyment of focal tasks, and cognitive capacity.
Stephanie, that's time. You feel free to email us with the remainder of your comments so that we absolutely hear everything that you had to say.
All right.
Thank you very much for sharing tonight. All right, next up, Michelle Rains.
Good evening, board members, superintendents, faculty, parents, members of the public. I'm here tonight to show you our kids at Olive Pierce Middle School are not safe. We have an ongoing bullying issue that needs to be addressed. I'm going to share a video with you, although I have 5 different recordings that were posted on social media and airdropped from 5 different students at OPMS of the same incident. To save you time, I'll just show you one. The child getting attacked in the video is my 13-year-old daughter, Demisha Varick. This video is filmed just 3 minutes after the school's dismissal in the lunch area directly in front of the vice principal's office. The attack went on for over a minute without any interventions and clearly no supervision. Had I been notified of the threats my child had been receiving the week before, I probably would have kept her home. Due to the school district's limit in what details can be sent to families, I was unaware that my child had been threatened. Superintendent Thurman stated that there are solutions to address the increased violent incidents at OPMS, and those are to hire a teacher, to get the sheriff's department partnering with OPMS, and 2 lunch periods. In my opinion, these are all temporary fixes to a bigger problem, and I would like you to diligently review the OPMS Comprehensive Safety Plan, because whatever the school was going against with their current safety plan, my child was not safe. So thank you.
Well, I will speak for myself and say I really appreciate the parents and community members that have come forward to talk to us about this tonight. And Michelle, you and I do know each other outside of this boardroom, and I had seen that video before, and I am no less affected now than I was the very first time that I saw it. And I would hope that no child would be exposed to that kind of violence, regardless of the whys or the hows. It just cannot happen. I don't know if staff has anything more that they want to add to this information piece before board members weigh in. We've given a lot of consideration already to this, being aware, and I know staff is working on it, and it's awful.
Yes, and I agree 100%, and I appreciate your time to come and to share and to, we absolutely take these things seriously. One fight is too many, and I've talked to administration there and other staff there. Everyone has the same urgency and concern, so we're going to do everything that we can, and again, I just would offer my sincere condolences and apology that happened, and it's good to see Demi here tonight. But we're going to be working. It's a discussion we have almost every day on next steps and where we are in the progress. So we're moving forward.
So our report tonight says we're adding another teacher whose job it will be to supervise and provide discipline support. Yeah. The sheriff is going to make more frequent visits, a sheriff's deputy, to Olive Pierce. What about our other schools?
The Lieutenant Vangler has asked all of his staff to spend at least 30 minutes every day on a campus, or 30 minutes every week on a campus. So they'll be coming by. That won't always be on campus. Sometimes it's parking. It's all kinds of different things. But specifically with OPMS, I know that he's working with Mr. Williams on very specific visits, even with just himself.
And the two lunches that we see listed here, is that to increase our adult to child ratio
Yes.
during those open times?
So there's less population out at a time.
What are the consequences for somebody intentionally hurting another student?
Yeah, part of the Ed Code 48900A1 is attempting, causing, or threatening to cause injury to someone. So, of course, the number of days of suspension will vary on the circumstances. So that's really what's covered there on when there's a threat or violence, or the threat of violence. It's absolutely suspendable up to 5 days, and can come with a recommendation for expulsion as well.
So I know some schools and school districts, they have zero tolerance for that. If you do it, you're immediately expelled from the school. might want to consider. It's one thing to defend yourself, although most schools that have the zero policy, if you defend yourself, you're also can
Yeah.
either be expelled.
But the challenge with a zero, zero tolerance is that then you're supposed to show that you've intervened and provided interventions throughout that process. So we would not recommend that it's just zero tolerance, you do it one time, you're expelled. We provide interventions and supports to make sure that doesn't happen again. But zero tolerance is a whole different ballgame, so to speak, especially on compliance and supporting students.
So, I mean, this is the first time we've ever had this conversation in the board meeting. So what
Usually these conversations happen in closed session, when we have a student that's being dismissed from the district.
Right. But I'm just talking about what the policy,
Right.
admin regulations and procedures are. So in this case, what do interventions look like for a student that would harm another student? I mean, I see all these discipline
Or threaten
incidents.
to harm,
Yeah,
right?
or
I mean,
threaten
if
to
there's
harm.
threats
Yeah,
first, what do we do?
What do those look like?
Yeah. So we heard tonight from our counselors and our social worker that look into the situation as it's being investigated. We'll find out the reason. Many times it has to do with social media, of course. But the counselors can intervene there to find out the situation and then help problem solve. And that comes from counselors, social workers, sometimes administrators, sometimes teachers. But those are some of the ways. Now, sometimes it'll involve drug abuse of some type or a vaping situation, so there's cessation programs. I know the high school has the Ready to Learn program that is also another attempt at an intervention. So there's several things in place that students have to participate in. If they Ready to Learn, for example, they sign a contract, but if they choose not to go, they choose not to go. But those are the things that come into play then. If they do hurt someone else and they go to expulsion, it's looked at the interventions that were tried, attempted. If the decision was not to do that, the expulsion usually moves forward.
An observation. So you have from 2018-19 school year to now. And based upon this partial data, it's probably, if you average it, maybe between 80 and 100 more incidents that's going to happen by the end of the year, if you were to think about that. But I'm looking at these numbers, and it's fighting, bullying, harassment, vaping, bullying, etc. But not all of those go. I mean, some of those escalate to harming another, but not all of those do. And so these numbers really don't tell the story of what's going on at all Pierce. I think the story really is that the discipline issues have escalated to great concern because they're at the upper end of things. They're not at the lower end of things where they're probably just them affecting themselves. Now it's affecting others. And so to me, in looking at this, yes, we need more people. We need more eyes on it. But at the same time, I would have to say maybe we should look at our policies, procedures, and administrative regulations about toughening them, making them so the consequences are harder. I mean, I know that sometimes there's this big debate about how hard to make them versus, because sometimes it's so hard that nobody ever has a chance to prove on themselves, right? There's no, we call it restorative justice. How do you restore yourself if you can't prove? But and so that's where the interventions come in. I get that. But at the same time, if you make it difficult enough, less people will do it. So anyways, I don't know. I think it might be a good idea to relook at our, I'm not just talking all of Paris, I'm talking across the board, because whatever we do, it's going to be across the board. It's not going to be at one school.
So yeah, our board policy pertaining to discipline and threats and the whole package here of bad behavior, scary behavior, but also school policy and what the school policy has been, and I know we have a new site administrator starting, but monitoring what that school policy is. We heard a parent mention a cell phone policy that Twin Peaks has. I don't know what that is, but I'm curious about that. I think policing these things when it's somebody's personal electronics is difficult. What do we have for counselors at OP?
We have 2 counselors, and they're involved as much as they can with this. I talked with the administration recently about their caseload and doing that. One of the pieces on here that we talked about with the emotional needs of students is a program. One of the programs we're looking at is a program that's been it's at every high school in Poway. It's in Grossmont. The numbers from Grossmont were 500 suspensions. It's an alternative to suspension program where students are required to spend minimum 4 hours in a counseling type setting. And so the numbers from just this year alone so far is that it's headed off 500 suspensions. So their numbers are reducing. So things like that we're looking at to help problem solve rather than just have the consequence in their home, 5 days, whatever it might be. Maybe they're recommended for expulsion, but that's not the final decision, and then they're back on campus. So we're really looking at how to attack the whole problem and how to intervene with students, in addition to making sure that the rules are the rules and we have to follow those. But there is a layer that, especially of this middle age, that intervention is critically important, along with relationships with staff.
Now, I don't know, I have not memorized Ed Code, but it would seem to me that if somebody is harming another student, they need to be isolated somehow. So I don't know if Ed Code, what it allows for, but if we can look into that, because to me, the last thing I want is for a student that harms another student and they're still exactly in the same class. And it's just, it's going to happen again. The other thing is I want to make mention, you brought up Twin Peaks. The reason Twin Peaks is used as a good example because Twin Peaks and...
Because we both went there?
No. I didnn't go to Twin Peaks.
Oh.
Twin Peaks and Olive Pierce, they're very much mirrored schools in their programs and the way that everything is done. It's been that way for a long time. So a lot of, they look up here, and then here they look down there and see what they're doing. It's not uncommon.
Well, the idea that we're waiting until a student harms another student to do something.
Yeah, that's not...
No.
I agree with Roger in that it's 2023. The times, they are changing. And whatever disciplinary accountability we have in place right now, it's not working. I support a no tolerance. We need to up our game. And it needs to be communicated to our student bodies that if what happened here in that video goes on, the aggressor is going to pay a very high price. And we may have to make some examples of aggressors to get the point across. But we need to draw a line and put an end to this.
That does work. It does require the work of the staff to do their part to make sure that, because it has to be enforced. It's not.
And here's the second half of my question. What would we as a board need to do to upgrade our disciplinary accountability today? As a board, what can we do to draw a line in the sand?
I think right now, this is informational. We can give direction to the superintendent. That's all we can do, because this is not an action item.
I think he's listening. I see him taking a lot of notes. And Don, you mind for 1 second?
No, please go.
I want to apologize to you that this happened on our campus. I apologize that this happened on our campus. It's unacceptable. I have a 6th grader, a daughter going to that school next year, and I'm very comfortable with her going there. But I tell you, I'd be sitting in the same place you are if this happens to her next year or the following year. So I apologize to the entire family.
I would like to apologize too and let you know that while I'm watching that video, I have tears in my eyes.
So I think the superintendent hears us loud and clear. This is not something that we can specifically vote on tonight and say, do this, 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 and this. But I think that I trust Dr. Thurman, that he hears us, that he has developed an initial plan and will continue to develop the plan. And if we need to fund additional resources, we're going to ask staff to figure out where do those funds come from, because we can't just continue to add positions and add programs. We are at a point in time where we'll have to take something or make some other changes, but that's part of our process of setting our budgetary priorities and giving direction to staff. So let's tackle this head on. Please come back to us with some options. I don't think I'm speaking as one person. I think I'm hopefully have consensus here. Please come back to us with some options to address the issues. One of the options that I would suggest is that we do look at a stronger cell phone policy on campus. I don't think the cell phones are the problem. I think they contribute to the problem. And if we can start picking off things that are contributors, then we will be able to move the needle in a positive fashion. So, boy, we could talk all night about this, but what else can we say other than we need to fix it?
Well, since Brian's taking notes, there are some things that we did tonight. We do have a new site administrator starting, who is coming into this position well aware of the issues at the school. We've made sure that she knows what the issues are and what we are very concerned about right now. And she's given us assurance that she understands and is monitoring even now before she started, so she can really hit the ground running. We also tonight added the TOA position, extra supervision. We've heard from our counselors. Maybe it would be helpful for the board to see a kind of an organizational chart of staffing at the school, what positions we have, which ones are filled, which ones are not filled, because I know we have trouble filling certain positions. I'm very concerned about student safety with unfilled positions, but maybe seeing that staffing chart, and we can draw that line about discipline and how it works and who's helping our students, ideally to avoid problems, not to discipline them after problems happen. So maybe seeing that staffing chart and knowing what positions we have.
And I would support harsher discipline. I don't know that I would ever support zero tolerance. Zero tolerance comes with a whole host of other cascading issues.
Well, once they're not with us, we can't work with them anymore.
And at zero tolerance, you know, one of the described behaviors is horseplay. That was me in the 7th grade. Sorry, that was me in the 8th grade. Granted, I never did what happened to your daughter, nor would I. But so I think if we go either extreme, we're wrong.
Zero tolerance is only on things like fighting, having a weapon on campus. It's usually those two things.
Yeah, and I just think that common sense has to go into every single equation that comes before us, and zero tolerance doesn't allow for that, in my opinion. So.
Right. No, I agree. It should not be for everything.
Yeah, but harsher penalties, I'd love to hear what options we can develop to, knock this business off at the school.
Well, let me clarify. Zero tolerance wouldn't be applied to every incident on campus. It would be applied to those incidents involving violence, where there was a fight, there was an attack, there was a weapon. That would be zero tolerance. The other things you mentioned are the other things on this list that are much less consequential and not violent at all. Of course, zero tolerance wouldn't impact those, but that should be clarified and written down in the new policy.
Yeah, and have staff come back with some
Would you
options.
go along with that?
Uh-huh. I would.
Okay, then we're in,
In Poway, what they do is they just move a kid from one school to the other. But when you have multiple middle schools and multiple high schools, you can do that. It's a little bit more challenging for us.
Maya, did you want to chime in?
I'm thinking we have to separate fighting and attacking and defending. We only have to punish whoever attacked, because we can't punish kids who defend themselves. So we would be punishing them for defending herself if it would be fighting, so it would not be fair. And it would be a great deterrent if kids were able to defend themselves, so they wouldn't be attacked next time. No?
Yeah, law enforcement, I believe, has a term called mutual combat. And I don't know that that is applicable, but, you know, would we then go after somebody? You make a great point. Would we then go after somebody who's defending themselves?
We shouldn't.
no,
No.
Yeah.
no. The assailant, yes. The victim, no.
Let's just not let it get to that. Let's deal with campus safety. Let's deal with student behavior so that no student feels like they have to defend themselves. I realize that's idealistic, but we can do better. We can do better than we're doing right now. We might not get to the ideal, but we can definitely do better. So, did anybody else want to say anything else on this tonight? In some ways, there just aren't words.
Right.
It's information, no action. So if nobody has anything else,
Just
do you?
something positive.
Okay.
I really feel like the new principal is going to really be a great fit. And, her focus is to establish more positive relationships and a better culture at the school like we used to have. And so I know COVID has kind of changed the culture nationwide, and so we're doing something about that. So I'm pretty confident with her.
Thank you, Roger. All right, at this point, we'll move on to Section I, District Operations, and our first item is the Superintendent's Report.
Yes. Good evening, board members, staff, members of the public, and those online with us. Tonight, I really just wanted to bring attention to our exemplary staff and students, and I just have a few little things that I've just witnessed personally that wanted to highlight. We've heard about some of these this evening, so I'll make this brief. You heard about the 29th annual track meet with Connie Halfaker and Candace Cox track meet. Was able to attend that, and I got there a little bit late, regretted it immediately because it was an amazing event where our staff, classified and certificated, and our students, baseball team, I think we had some wrestlers there, were working with our students that are in special education and helping them compete in all kinds of events. And a couple parents that I met there had tears in their eyes talking about what that day meant for them to see their children involved. And it was just an amazing event. Hannah was guiding a young man in that race, in one of the races. And to see the students, some of their teachers and their aides, as I was talking to them on the sideline, said, this young man's been looking forward to this since the first day of school to get to compete. So it was really just an amazing event, and I can't wait for next year. It's no wonder it's the 29th annual one already, so 30 years for next year. We also had our monthly Ramona Rotary Club meeting where they honor our students of the month from the high schools. And this month was no exception. Last week it was April 11th. And we honored 3 students. We heard about Kai Snell from Ramona High School, Aiden Pedersen from MVA, and then Brandon Martinez from Montecito High School. It's really special because the Rotary Club asks them to share a little bit about themselves, and they're not always comfortable to do that, but did an excellent job. And then their parents shared, and then they had a school staff, the principal or teacher, share about them as well. And it just was so exciting and encouraging to see these young men that were there this time. Usually it's a mix of guys and girls, but just to see what they're doing and to hear them express their appreciation of their family and of their sites is really huge. And then, of course, the skills competition. I tried to leave here early enough Friday to get to Ontario. We went up to Arrowhead, and I wanted to stop there to see some of the events, but I didn't make it. But Saturday, in our texting back and forth, they said, we already got several kids going to Atlanta. So I think I've heard 10 today, but I have a feeling it's more than that. We'll hear more about that. So really looking forward to those competitions and what they do. Kai was telling me about the competition he was going to be in. It was a 4-hour evaluation of an engine, and it's going to be at the B&W Motorsports Center there in Ontario, off-site from the convention center. So would have been amazing to see, but I didn't get to see it this year, so I'm hoping for next year. Also, just the trips, the commitment of our staff to plan the 2 trips that happened. NVA went to Europe, and then the OPMS students went to Washington, D.C. and New York. Our own Tony Newman went on that trip. What year was this? How many? 25? This is 25 years, yes, which is amazing. And just for students to get to have those opportunities takes so much planning and preparation, and then to be there in the midst of it all, and with supervision and all the things that come with that, I'm just
It's not planning for Tony. He enjoys it.
I know deep down he does, but the bottom line is it's a lot of time away from your family and everything else, and it's just, we really honor that commitment for our students and all the things that come along with trips like that. And then I really wanted to recognize both negotiations teams. We met twice for this round of negotiations, but that's not, it sounds somewhat simple, and it's not. There were a lot of meetings, a lot of preparation. Can't tell you how many hours Ms. Satterley spent analyzing our budget and looking at what we're able to do, and then for the RTA to come knowing what their members want, and not needing to pause to go check and to get back to us. And sometimes that can be a painstakingly slow process, but I just was so complimentary of their team and our team to come to the table ready, and it just was a great example. And last but not least, though, I'm very grateful and supportive for the clear direction from the Board of Trustees. We brought details, you guys provided us parameters, and that's where we went forward, but just the trust and the collaboration with us as well is extremely important from all 3 groups there, both the board and then both associations. So really can't speak highly enough of that whole process and the professionals that were involved, and it's just a great time coming back from spring break and getting to our last 41 days of the school year. Thank you.
All right. Very good, thank you. Dan, you have a board report.
I have a very brief one.
Very
At
good.
the Leadership Council meeting last week, the violence at Olive Pierce was brought up by a bunch of the leaders in this community, Chamber of Commerce, Water District, a whole bunch of them. And they proffered solutions. One of the things that they suggested that had been used before successfully is that students wear a scabbard with their ID on it, so that if there is something going on the campus, they can be identified immediately as misbehaving. And I sent a list to Dr. Thurman that included that. I thought that was interesting. Because sometimes, in a situation like that, you can't identify the good guy and the bad guy. But if you have ID tags, it's easier to figure it out. And that was brought up by the council. Something to think about.
Okay, thank you. Maya?
I will pass. I said enough tonight.
Okay. Darren?
Thank you. Congratulations to Katie Scahan for being our District Teacher of the Year. She is a great example of what good looks like. And we're lucky to have her, and congratulations to her. Please pass that on. I also want to quickly thank RTA and CSEA for their patience this year in terms of negotiations, because we had a lot of turnover in key positions. And they were patient and allowed our new assistant superintendents to come in and get their feet on the ground and do their jobs and prepare for negotiations and then get going on it. So our budget cycle is backwards. We ask for continued patience because we're going off of projections, not actual numbers when we enter into negotiations when we do. So thank you for your patience, and please continue to be patient with us because the process is not designed correctly. And it's based on timing, and I don't know how we fix it, but thank you, and I'm glad we're close.
Excellent. Thank you, Darren. Roger.
Just congratulations to all of our Skills USA gold medalists from the 2 high schools. It's awesome. And just wanted to compliment our staff, just like the RTA did for their representatives in negotiations. Appreciate all the work that you've done, all the preparation going into that, and the results.
It's not very often when they thank staff.
Right.
So nice work.
And then the other thing is just the board retreat, a couple times that we've had. I thought that was very productive, and I think that we need to continue that process. So thank you for getting that process going. I think that if I don't know when the next one is. Was that it? Just the 2?
Just the 2 were planned at this time, but we can do more.
I think we need a follow-up. Dawn, I'm going to give you a task. You got to give us the renewed protocols in miniature version.
Well, no promises there, Roger.
Yeah, refuse.
No promises on that one. All right. Does that conclude your report?
That's it. I'm just.
Okay, thank you very much. The board is reconvening their closed session. We may have items to report out, but we have a number of items to still address. So if anybody's interested, we will check back in here to report out. Otherwise, you can always check back with the district office tomorrow. All right. Thank you very much for being here.